the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Our God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. He's roaring.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Good morning. Welcome to this Thursday, December 21st, 2017. 8th year of Cheonggi, 11th month, 4th day by the heavenly calendar. I'm your host, Hyung Sean Moon, second king of Cheongguk. Broadcasting live from the Cheongguk studios to all the kings and queens of the kingdom of God. Good morning. It is 5:02 a.m. Let's go first to Tim, the agent elder, for our AccuWeather forecast. Tim.
All right. Today it's 25 degrees, cloudy at the Cheongguk, and we're going down to 21 degrees before the sun rises, a bit after 7. Actually, today's the shortest day of the year, so that means that the sun is rising at the latest time of the year. It's rising at about 7:21 today. And I remember that in the summer solstice, it rose at 5:25, but that was on summertime. So we're hour difference. So on standard time, that'll be 4:25. So there's approximately a 3-hour difference between summer and winter solstices here at the Cheongguk.
Interesting.
So let's see. So from tomorrow, it'll start rising later and later. Today we're expecting to get up to 35 degrees, partly sunny. Tomorrow, a little bit of freezing drizzle again in the morning, going up to 39 degrees. Saturday, 42 degrees with fog and periods of rain. Sunday, though, should be better, 39 degrees and partly sunny.
That's amazing. So it's dipping down today, but it's going to be zooming up again tomorrow.
A little bit, yes.
Boy, oh boy. Okay, that's it for your headline news. Let's go. For your
the weather.
Let's go to our breaking news
All right.
with Tim.
All right, there was an incident in Melbourne, Australia during the night. An SUV plowed into a crowd of pedestrians in front of a major train station in Melbourne, Australia. 14 people were injured, and so far we don't have any reports of anybody being killed, although 2 people are critical. And the 2 people are in custody, and they are of Middle Eastern appearance.
Gee, I wonder if they said Allahu Akbar.
I don't know. None of that is
I wonder if they're jihadis trying to kill Christians during Christmas.
But, the police are saying that it was a deliberate act, but they do not know the motivation behind the attack.
I'm really guessing here.
According to...
You really have to guess. I mean, you really have to
Yes,
be...
wild
Sherlock
guess.
Holmes couldn't figure this one out.
Wild guess.
Oh, my goodness.
After the white Suzuki SUV crashed into a bollard, a steel safety post meant to ensure pedestrian safety, police wrestled down and cuffed the driver around 4:45 p.m. local time, which would be approximately 4 hours ago. Witnesses say the vehicle ran through a red light and sped up outside Flinders Street Station, train station, and sped up to hit pedestrians. Police confirmed that 14 people were injured. Several were taken to the hospital, and 2 were in critical condition, including a preschool-aged child with head injuries. Original reports said that at least 19 people were injured in the attack. Police took to Twitter to ask for any videos or images of the scene that might assist them with their investigation. The incident took place on a crowded intersection in Australia's second largest city, which at this time is packed with holiday shoppers. This comes at a time when vehicle-related terror attacks have been on the rise.
Well, this is the reason why you can't have anti-civilization, folks inside your country.
Yes.
You can't. And you can't have civilizations that seek to literally, by their religion and theology, seek to murder and massacre people on the basis of the fact they're unbelievers. It's just absolutely ridiculous. You just can't have it. And we just see these continual jihadi attacks everywhere you go. It's just every single day, everywhere. It's just totally absurd. This is why Israel, by the way, has allowed their school teachers to be armed. Okay, and even Thailand, southern Thailand as well, has allowed their school teachers to be armed because they've learned that these jihadis attack small, soft targets. Of course, they're attacking now streets and pedestrians on the road, etc. David Grossman, who is lieutenant colonel and former Army Ranger, etc., he predicts that they will attack soft targets such as elementary schools, and they've done that in Pakistan. They've done that all over the world. He has a whole slew of attacks that he mentions in his speech. But the fact of the matter is, that's why you want your civilians armed. I mean, his conclusion was ridiculous. I mean, not ridiculous, but his conclusion was one step away from the truth. And he said, well, we need to, I didn't like the language used. He said, our law enforcement, our troops are our first line of troops on the ground in this war against terrorism. So I didn't like that. I didn't like that kind of hearkening back to the Bush days. But he didn't mention, for example, that the civilian class is the first line of defense. It's actually not law enforcement. Law enforcement takes at least 10 minutes to get there, depending on their distance from the school. On average, at least in our area, it's anywhere from 45 to 1 hour. And then they get there and they have to do an assessment because they can't just run in. They have to find out what part of the building is in, what part of the shooters, what are they doing, how many are they. They have to assess this first. And where seconds matters.
Where seconds count, the police are only minutes away. And it's not like we're banging on cops or anything. It's just that in this universe, which we have physical reality, physical limitations of physics, it's just not physically possible to get to that location quickly. There was the old lady who was demonstrating with the placard that said, I carry a gun because a cop would be too heavy.
Exactly right. And so if you had a situation like Israel, or you had a situation like Thailand, where you would have common sense gun laws, that is to say, responsible citizens should be armed, then when you have crazies like this, running over people in Nice, France, for example, where they just plowed into a concert. There was a rock concert, and the guy just plowed into. Then he got out and started shooting people. So if you had that scenario where people were armed, they could immediately, as soon as he's plowing people, okay, you would have some casualties, obviously, because nobody can predict human behavior before it happens, right? Maybe our intelligence agencies should be investigating people like this, who have ties to ISIS, who are watching ISIS videos, you name it, online. So maybe you can try to stop it before then, but you may have casualties as he plows into the people, because that just happens in a fraction of a second. But as soon as that has happened, you'll have people that are firing back into his vehicle. And you say, oh, you'll have people that the bullets will go right through and they'll harm other pedestrians, etc. Most pedestrians, if you see the videos, are fleeing from the area. Okay? It's only the sheepdog that are going to be running towards the van. Most people are fleeing as soon as they realize that's a van that's hitting them. They start fleeing from the scene. They don't hang around. They don't just stand there and watch. They start running. And so people who are sheepdog will be moving towards the van and will be shooting into the van, and they're trained so they know, and they're going to be checking their backstop. And this is exactly what gunfighters do, who have that experience, was it Dave Grossman, was showing the pictures of live time shootings where in Pakistan, I believe it was, and you see all the pedestrians running one way, and you see the guy in the military, American soldier, just literally walking the other way. And he's showing live time. He shows actually a couple frames of pictures of people running away while the military guy is walking towards the firefight. And you have a little kid, a little boy, who's actually glued to the guy's leg. He's hiding behind that sheepdog. He's hiding behind that veteran or that active duty soldier. So those kind of folks will move forward. And I'm not saying all civilians who are armed will do that, but the veterans will definitely do that. And that will give strength and empowerment to the normal civilians to gain confidence to also come in for backup. You see what I'm saying? So you have different layers of defense that come in to put that demon down. And this, of course, is a reality. I mean, if the jihadis knew that wherever they go, there's going to be somebody in the crowd, man, woman, they don't even know who, and they have to keep guessing, and they have to be on their toes. No, they choose the gun-free zones. In the past 60 attacks, mass shootings in America since the 1960s, only 3 were not in gun-free zones. That makes 57 in gun-free zones. 57 out of 60 in gun-free zones. Sorry, these idiots know to go to gun-free zones because gun-free zones allow them to massacre as many people as possible. So it's just a simple reality. I mean, Mr. Larry Pratt, founder of Gun Owners of America, I believe the founder, or at least director. He's a founder and director.
Founder and executive director emeritus.
Yes, executive director emeritus. Mentioned that fact when he was on the show the other day. Such a tremendous patriot. I always, even yesterday, I was encouraging all the ninjas who are my martial arts students to obviously train hard, but join Gun Owners of America, join NRA, join these organizations that help protect our civilian rights to arm ourselves against wickedness and evil people. Boy, oh boy, if the demons saw the baby pistol AR. Boy, oh boy, that's a beautiful little gun. Thompson finally is making them pistol AR. Check it out, folks. I got my Meprolite sight finally installed on the top. And the iron sights will be coming in, sling and O-light. A flashlight, 1200 lumen flashlight is also coming in. Can't wait to add those things. And so our beautiful pistol AR is just becoming more and more gorgeous. Maybe what we'll do is we'll have this be the image. This AR, we'll have the Thompson AR on our image of the King's Report. You know, once we have all the accoutrements that are put on, and maybe for our Iron Rod coffee as well, I'll use this as the silhouette background. It is the Thompson historical gun, folks, historical gun. In other news, Trump cheers GOP tax overhaul, slams Democrats who oppose it. President says full benefit of package isn't yet absorbed by markets, predicts jump after signing. Can we get the story on Wall Street? On the Wall Street Journal here? Can you get that story, Tim? Let's go to Yahoo's covering of this story. Donald Trump tastes victory. On this side. Jogi. Donald Trump tastes victory. At last.
I don't know if you're in Drudge or Breitbart.
We're here on Drudge. Look at this. Looking out over the south lawn of the White House, here are some pictures of it. Flanked by lawmakers who had just handed him the greatest victory of his tumultuous young presidency, Donald Trump drank in the scene. Now this idiot, look at how biased and racist this writer is. For the most unconventional of presidents, impulsive, unpredictable, so often frustrated by the exercise of power. It was payback time at last. In the chill December air under the... So they're admitting, even these leftist lunatics are admitting that this is a payback. In the chill December air, under a pale sky dotted with clouds, Trump was celebrating passage of the sweeping tax reform he promised to push through if American voters delivered him to the Oval Office. The much anticipated event had been staged with care. Lawmakers and advisors primed to cheer and applaud surrounding him at the lectern and packed the majestic staircase that framed the scene. And what, Obama didn't stage the cheers and the advisors primed to cheer and applaud? You always had Pelosi and Maxine Waters up there smiling. Give me a freaking break. But the relief was plain to see in Trump's face as a businessman turned president whose need for recognition appears to know no bounds. See, I'm sure that really had to be reported. You see that this subjective, narcissistic, racist comment about President Trump. Look at this. Look how biased these writers are. You know what I'm saying? Look at this. Look what he wrote. Trump, he was happy to see his Trump's whatever. Relief was plain to see in Trump's face, etc., whose need for recognition appears to know no bounds. That's really objective news telling, Tim. Really objective. See, they think the American public is so stupid that we can't see crap like this and realize this is propaganda and it's purposely meant to smear Trump.
I have a Wall Street Journal article if you want to go through that one instead.
I mean, how do these idiots know that he has a need for recognition that appears no bounds? Why? Because he gets things done? Why? Because he was behind the scenes? Why? Because he's a successful businessman and successful TV celebrity? I mean, these people are just so. Do they think that the American people feel that he's doing this stuff and getting his hands dirty and draining the swamp for the fact that he wants to gain recognition? Trump is a patriot. He has a genuine heart to stop screwing the American person and to stop screwing the American people, selling us out to foreign conglomerates, to the globalist banking cartel Rothschild demons. He is sick of that as well. He is a secret patriot, billionaire blue-collar worker who hates seeing America be sold out to globalization, having us being deindustrialized, made poor, so we have to worship the George Soroses and the Rothschild Satanist pedophile running sex trafficking demons of the world. He doesn't want to see that happen. He knows America is the last vanguard of sovereignty and freedom in the world, with 90 firearms per 100 residents in America, the highest in the world. And of course, that brings us down, if you exclude the cities, to literally the lowest homicide rate in the world. If you exclude the Democrat-run liberal lunatic cities with tons of gun control and the citizens cannot get guns. If you exclude those crazy areas, America literally has the lowest gun rate homicide rate in the freaking world. And we have the most guns per capita in the dang world. And the globalists and the political Satanists and international banking cartels hate that model because they are totalitarians, they are authoritarians, they are collectivist centralists, they are communist socialists, they are fascists. And every dictator knows that you have to disarm your population and remove the rod of iron and destroy the people's will to fight by making them mentally ill to take over a nation. You have to break the back of your population. You have to break their will to fight back. You have to make them subservient, and you have to disarm them and indoctrinate them with education camps. That's exactly what the leftist lunatics and neocons in America have done. The leftists have indoctrinated our children into communism. The neocon, quote, rightists, have indoctrinated our children into the war on terror and these fake wars on unidentified, non-state actors. Whether it's the war on drugs, the war on terror, the war on whatever it is, it's only increased drug crime and increased terrorism. The federal government, the government cannot do crap well. They don't make enough money. They steal people's money. Anything they try to do, they make it worse, creating larger and larger bureaucracies that suck up the, quote, taxpayers' money, but they're stealing to pump into these little friendly, pal, PAL accounts and PAL departments. It's all a big hoax and a big lie. It is the citizens that do better. It is the citizens that protect our children and our neighborhoods better. It is the citizens that do everything better. And when you have freedom and sovereignty, and citizens can make a difference by unleashing their talents given to them by Almighty God and serve the public, whether it be through a product or service or other thing, they are able to create the most productive technology, the most productive products, services, etc., at higher quality and lower price. Because they get rid of the stupid government bureaucracies which continue to grow day by day, every single freaking day. It's absolutely ridiculous. The rod of iron and the crown represents sovereignty, represents our connection to Almighty God. We are made in the image of God. Those who are in Christ's kingdom, we are kings and queens of the kingdom of God, co-heirs with Christ, and he rules with the rod of iron. That he will smite the nations. That means wickedness and evil. And when you give power of the rod of iron to the normal person and the lower local jurisdictions and civilians, that's when you have real justice. Of course, it has to be in a Judeo-Christian framework and a Judeo-Christian culture by which the people can be guided spiritually, psychologically, emotionally. So they learn the principles of loving thy Creator and loving your neighbor. The rod of iron in the hands of the sheepdog, and of course that empower the sheep as well, is the peace, police, peace militia, local civilian arms citizens who do not sit down and stand down when evil invades and wolves attack. Look at this totally biased, racist little liberal lunatic writer that has to add in their subjective little snide stabs and slashes at Trump. Forgotten for now was the bitter failure to repeal Obamacare, his predecessor's flagship health reform. I mean, these people are so distastefully, despicably biased. It is so nasty to read. And I mean, it just shows you the nature of Yahoo and all these little stupid little social media outlets, these little think tanks and these little internet companies that are all so incredibly, blazingly, flagrantly biased. I mean, if you're promoting Yahoo News, don't you want to at least pretend that you're not biased? I mean, you hire flagrantly, fumigating, murderously obvious leftist lunatics to tell your story. How discredited and how unbelievable. And of course, you're pretending to be these objective. If you're openly conservative or openly liberal newspaper, obviously we would expect this. But if you're pretending to be unbiased, this is what the American people are sick of. When you get Breitbart, they don't pretend they're objective. They say we come with a value system. InfoWars comes with a value system. The difference between the leftist lunatics is that they come with a value system, but they try to pretend that they're objective. And thinking people are that dumb. Thank God for the internet and the decentralization of the free flow of information. Well, now we're able to consume information from sources that we trust and we agree with in terms of value proposition. Incredible. Forgotten the setbacks of recent polls, chief among them the defeat of Trump's candidate in Alabama, Roy Moore, which raised the specter of losing Republican control. For the 71-year-old president, it was a day rejoicing, flanked by his daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner, as well as Gary Cohn, Trump's economic advisor, ex-Goldman Sachs banker and chief architect of the tax reform. Always fun when you win. Trump had no speech as such to deliver, launching instead with gusto into a series of off-the-cuff remarks. He spoke of the tremendous enthusiasm right now in this country, cracked jokes about the ups and downs of power, how it's always fun when you win. What does it mean? It means jobs, 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 he quipped, promising the tax cut would deliver a shot in the arm for the U.S. economy. The president dished out smiles, pumped lawmakers' hands, singled out this friend or that special person, and the Republicans returned the favor, taking turns to sing his praises. Setting the tone, House Speaker Paul Ryan credited Trump's exquisite presidential leadership for the success of the contentious tax plan, even though Paul Ryan has been every step of the way with Mitch McConnell and these pathetic neocon Bush holdovers, Obama supporting Bush holdovers. He's forced to give his fake little support after he was against every single thing the president has been doing. These pathetic, pimped out little Washington whores we are sick of them. Sick of them. They're sick and disgusting, despicable, troglodyte scumbags who need to pack their bags and get kicked out of D.C. Ridiculous. These are the same individuals and the same neocon holdover, Obamacare supporting bastards that are trying to pass with Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, our state, the daddy state, the PA state, the PA state, the independent state, the Declaration of Independence state, the Founding Fathers state. These fools are trying to pass the what the GOA calls the speeding ticket gun ban law. They're trying to ban the gun rights of citizens who have an outstanding or an unpaid speeding ticket. And these idiots in Pennsylvania who claim to be Republicans and run on the ticket of gun rights are freaking signing the bill with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. What does that tell you? These people are fakes. Unbelievable. They've already stolen the gun rights of 257,000 gun owners and veterans. They target the veterans because they know the veterans, if they become tyrannical, that is, the federal government becomes tyrannical, the veterans are the military who saw action in the field, who know how to fight and know how to organize an army to destroy them, just like any totalitarian knows that. And they're going after our veterans. They are the front line against tyranny. Our veterans, unfortunately, law enforcement is not, because when it becomes federalized, which it has, law enforcement, majority of law enforcement will go along with the orders because they can threaten you with pension removals and firings. The front line against tyranny is not law enforcement because they're controlled by the state, even though most of them are good and conservative. But in the end, most of them will do their, quote, job and just listen to their orders for fear of losing their job. That's why you want law enforcement to be decentralized and in the hands of the civilians. Just like it was in the United States where we had the sheriff system and the civilians were deputized as police officers. That's why our founding fathers did that. The front line against tyranny is the civilian armed class. The front line against tyranny is the veteran class. They're the ones that should be training the civilian armed class. So just in case the tyrannical, totalitarian tentacles of the tendrils of the, what's another T word? Demonic, okay, that's not T. I just ran out of T words. Demonic, what's that big monster, that mythical monster? I don't play D&D and this kind of crap. What's that big mythical beast that eats stuff, that destroys stuff in the Iliad, or the the Roman legend? There's this big monster, Behemoth. Is it called Behemoth? I don't know. I can't remember what the heck it's called. The veterans are the front line against these tyrannical behemoths. They are the front line. And they need to be armed and they need to be training civilians for if that ever happens. And of course, that's what they do when they're able to run private businesses and train civilians. Like Chris Costa and Don Razzo and James Eager. And did they unban James Eager yet from YouTube? They've got to unban James Eager. That is ridiculous. YouTube is a leftist, lunatic, completely biased, racist organization. They are sick and despicable. And they're able to monopolize the social media network platform so that people are forced to go on there and they can ban them whatever they want because they're private companies. We need to make alternatives to YouTube. Trump has to help demonopolize these industries so that competition can be introduced in. Can you believe they're able to steal veterans' rights to own firearms? They've already stolen 257,000 veterans' rights to human rights, by the human rights to own defense and arms to defend themselves and their nation. They're purposely doing this. The politicians left and right, they are both corrupt and wicked, other than Trump, Rand Paul, and Trey Gowdy, and a few others on Capitol Hill. All the other ones are sold out, pimped out, despicable demons. I think Pence is now, he was part of that neocon establishment. Now, because of Trump, he's modified his behavior. He was supportive of TPP. I've always been wary of Trump. You've heard me rant about Trump every freaking day before when the candidacy was announced. These people need to be stopped. Everybody needs to write Pat Toomey, these pathetic neocon trash bags, scumbags, fake Republicans. They're fake conservatives. They're fake. They're trying to disarm the public, slowly working with the most radical communists on Capitol Hill, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Are you fucking kidding me? How can any Republican in their freaking right mind sign a bill with Chucky Deli Schumer? Mob boss Deli Mafia Schumer. What a ridiculous compact these neocon fake Republicans are. Sick of these idiots. These people need to be removed and taken down. And the deep state is being taken down by President Trump. He is whooping their ashtray. It's ridiculous. Setting the tone, House Speaker Paul Ryan, who hates Trump and is against everything that Trump does until he wins, and then he puts his tail down and between his legs, and then says his accolades, even though every step of the way he's been against him and trying to block it. Thank goodness he's retiring, that piece of trash. Credited Trump's exquisite presidential leadership for the success of the contentious tax plan assailed by Democrats and Paul Ryan and Republicans as they give away to the wealthiest that risk blowing a hole in the national debt. Not to be, now the Democrats think about national debt. Now the Democrats worry about debt, huh?
Yes. After Obama doubled it, yes.
After he doubled it to freaking $20 trillion, he went from 10 trillion to 20 freaking trillion. They had no problem doubling it and stealing taxpayers' money in the 8 years of their political reign under Obama, the fallen messiah, as Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson refers to him as. Ridiculous fool. These two-faced, hypocritical, whitewashed, tomb brood of vipers. We are sick of these, and this is why God's kingdom needs to come. Because democracy does not last. Because you have demons like that who try to go in there and change it for the worse. Communist, socialist, you name it. Democracies do not last. And that's why God will come and establish his kingdom, where you cannot change the law because the law is given by God. And he will rule with the crown and the rod of iron. And he will appoint his judges, his saints will be appointed to rule with the crown and rod of iron, as well as co-heirs with Christ in the kingdom. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Hi there, folks, and look at what I've got here today. My God, take a look at this. This is a BFR in 454 Casul with an octagonal barrel, magna porting, micarta grips. And look at that, it even has my initials on it, JM. Look at that thing of beauty, my God. Pop open the cartridge insertion door, and look at that cylinder spin. The finest revolvers in the world. That's a cannon. That's a cannon. Oh, man. Pretty accurate, though. That's our target. Oh, boy. Massive repo.
Let hope arise and make the darkness hide. My faith is dead, I need a resurrection somehow.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, Thursday, December 21st, 2017. Second King reporting live from the Cheonggyeong Palace Studios, all the kings and queens of the Kingdom of God. Here is the letter I received from Gun Owners of America. We'll be covering more Gun Owners of America. They also cover news that's related to Second Amendment. So we'll be more and more on our King's Report broadcast covering those issues. This is a message I received from them the other day, and we spread it to all our people across the world, across the nation. Tell your senator to remove his support of Fix NICS.
Fix Nix, yeah.
You can reach Senator Patrick Toomey, who's quote a Republican, at 202-224-4254. That's 202-224-4254, 202-224-4254, With your help, we can stop Chuck Schumer, Dianne Feinstein, and Michael Bloomberg and keep them from doing their gun control happy dance. They have crafted a major gun control package and have duped a dozen Republicans into helping them. Tragically, one of those Republicans is PA Senator Patrick Toomey. He is a co-sponsor of S2135, the so-called Nix Fix legislation. And his partners on that bill consist of a sick assortment of gun-hating Democrats from places like New York and California. Sadly, several Republicans thought they could get some good ink in the left-wing media by supporting well-disguised gun control. One of them is your senator. Another is a chief sponsor of the bill, Senator John Cornyn of Texas. So watch out for him, folks, down there in Texas. But it's now become clear that this bill would force the VA to send even more names of veterans into the NICS system, where already more than 257,000 veterans have lost their gun rights. It would suck up the medical marijuana list from 29 states to disarm them and most likely reinstate the Social Security gun ban that Congress just repealed. It would push to have people with bench warrants forwarded to the FBI even if the subjects were guilty of nothing more than an unpaid traffic ticket. The tragedy in all of this is that Senator Patrick Toomey was elected on a platform supporting the Second Amendment, not a promise to destroy it. And there's no reason why a Republican senator should be joining with the rogues gallery of leftist cooks to attack the Second Amendment. GOA activists have had success in pulling Republicans off gun control bills in the past, but it takes a strong grassroots effort. Remember that when lawmakers feel the heat, they see the light. That's why I'm asking, of course, they're asking, that's why we call Senator Toomey at 202-224-4254 and urge him to remove his co-sponsorship from the S2135 bill. Here are some of the talking points for your call. Besides the chief sponsor of S2135, the bill's main supporters are Chuck Schumer and Dianne Feinstein, the leaders of the gun control movement. Senator Patrick Toomey should not have his name on the same bill as those gun grabbers. This bill will bribe states to add thousands of names of otherwise law-abiding citizens into the NICS system, the NICS system, adding more veterans and even Americans with unpaid traffic tickets, completely circumventing due process. Senator Patrick Toomey ran on a pro-gun ticket. He needs to remember his campaign promises and uphold his oath to office.
Toomey's position on gun control has changed radically during his time in office, and he's very much of a gun control advocate now.
Isn't it funny how they change
Yes.
when they go into office? Isn't it funny? He says, GOA tells us, don't let them tell you that the bill doesn't contain the word traffic ticket. Gun grabbers aren't stupid. But when they pay $500 million to enforce an already unconstitutional law, as the Cornyn-Schumer bill does, they are supporting all of the bad things in the law that are bribing states to enforce. So again, please call Patrick Toomey and let him to withdraw his co-sponsorship from the Cornyn-Schumer-Feinstein bill. That is from Larry Pratt, Executive Director Emeritus. From Gun Owners of America, who will, of course, be joining us in Switzerland and of course, have joined us on the show. We'd love to have him back talking about this issue. These are true patriots, folks. These are the true patriots that are out there. And that's really one of the specialities of our show. We cover a lot of Second Amendment issues. We have now Gun Owners of America and their website taken up on stage right there on the screen, even though my computer's kind of crashed and I can't pull it up. Let's go back to the news about the tax reforms with Tim, the agent elder. Tim.
About the tax reforms, okay.
Yes.
I'll pull out that the Wall Street Journal article. Congress gave final approval Wednesday to a $1.5 trillion tax cut, delivering a major victory for President Trump and GOP leaders after nearly a year in political control of the Capitol. At the heart of the plan, the most sweeping since 1986, is a cut in the corporate tax rate to 21% from 35% that is expected to provide a stimulus to the U.S. economy as soon as next year. The tax plan also cuts individual tax rates and aims to simplify the tax code by eliminating some deductions, trimming others, and jettisoning a personal exemption. Individuals could see the impact as soon as February, White House officials said. In 2019, about 48% of households will receive a tax cut of greater than $500, according to the Nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation. though the tax cuts will peter out over time and the plan's longer-term implications for growth remain unclear. Starting in 2019, the GOP plan also includes a repeal of the Affordable Care Act's mandate that most people get health insurance or pay a penalty, another GOP priority. The bill encountered a last-minute hitch that required the House to revote Wednesday, and the president's signing of the bill may not happen until January. One of Mr. Trump's top economic advisors, Gary Cohn, said Wednesday the timing of the bill's signing depends on the outcome of separate talks in Congress about a government spending measure. He's referring to the effort to keep the government from shutting down tomorrow night. On Wednesday afternoon, the president and congressional leaders celebrated the tax plan's clearance through Congress at a gathering on the South Lawn of the White House. Earlier surrounded by his cabinet in the cabinet room, Mr. Trump previewed some of the likely pitch to voters, predicting that financial markets would surge following passage of the legislation. I don't think the market has even begun to realize how good these are, Mr. Trump said. In recent months, the GOP president has touted stock market gains as a reason to support the tax bill. Mr. Trump described the package as providing a tremendous amount of relief for the middle class. It's really above all else, it's a jobs bill, he said. Democrats said the tax plan doesn't provide enough direct relief to middle class and warn of health premium increases and future spending cuts. They point to an analysis from the Joint Committee on Taxation that shows that less than 25% of individual tax cuts will go to the middle class, and those breaks expire after 2025. Tax breaks do not lead to job creation, said Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the chamber's Democratic leader, after the vote. They lead to big CEO salaries and money for the very, very wealthy. Republicans counter that the corporate tax break and other changes to the tax code for corporate shareholders and business owners will benefit many in the middle class too. Business groups lauded the plan's anticipated impact on economic growth and investment. AT&T Inc. said they would make a one-time $1,000 payment to more than 200,000 workers once Mr. Trump signs the bill. Polls suggest many people aren't convinced of the bill's benefits. Nearly two-thirds of people said they believe the package was designed mostly to help corporations and the wealthy, and 24% said the bill was a good idea, according to a Wall Street Journal NBC News poll this month. Passage of the bill sets the stage for a hectic period early next year when employers change withholding in paychecks and businesses and people must reconsider myriad financial decisions. Companies, for instance, will have to evaluate their debt levels, given new limits on the deduction of interest payments, and executives will consider whether to bring back money stockpiled overseas. Home buyers will have to consider, among other things, whether to take out mortgages exceeding $750,000, the amount above which interest is no longer deductible. In Washington, political strategists have begun looking to the tax plan's impact on the midterm elections next year. All of our fate in 2018 is largely tied to the selling of the tax reform plan, said Corey Bliss, executive director of the American Action Network, a Republican group that spent $24 million since August promoting the tax changes in competitive House districts. The number one thing for the midterms, we have to convince people we can govern and we can do things that help their everyday lives. The party of the sitting president has traditionally fared poorly in midterms 2 years after an election. Democrats have said they have electoral momentum after recent statewide victories in Virginia, Alabama, and New Jersey. Mr. Trump's own approval ratings also remain near historic lows for a first-year president, but with congressional approval ratings in the doldrums, GOP lawmakers expect Mr. Trump to take a starring role in the effort to persuade voters of the tax plan's benefits, especially to the middle class. Mr. Trump opened a tax debate earlier this year with an eye on the midterms, promoting the bill by traveling to states he won in 2016 and that have Democratic senators seeking re-election in 2018. The president also has touted the tax plan's measures to repeal part of the Affordable Care Act that mandates that most people get health insurance or pay a penalty, a key GOP priority. As long as the president's on message and we're out there on message, I think we can turn it around, said Representative Devin Nunes, a Californian Republican who helped write the bill. Democrats say they would make the tax bill an issue in the midterms, in part by targeting voters in the suburbs where the party found success in recent statewide races. Among 12 House Republicans who opposed the tax bill were several who represent largely suburban districts, including Representative Rodney Frelinghuysen in New Jersey and Darrell Issa in California. The bill passed the House 224 to 201. Well, the reason those people opposed is because of the limitation on the ability to deduct state and local taxes. That's capped at $10,000. And so Republicans in New York, New Jersey, and California opposed it because, well, people are going to move out of those places. Either that or going to have to cut taxes. because people pay more than $10,000 in the state and local, including property taxes there. All but one of the Republicans who voted against the bill represent portions of New York, New Jersey, or California, see, high tax states that will be hit the hardest by the provisions that curb deductions for state and local taxes. Representative Tom MacArthur was the only House Republican from New Jersey to vote for the bill, and his seat is a potential Democratic target in 2018. He woke up to home state headlines that made plain the political winds he faces. Tax bill could hurt New Jersey Senate. State Republicans read the headline of the Daily Record featuring a large photo of Mr. MacArthur. MacArthur, only rep from New Jersey to vote yes, read the top of the page headlines of the Ashbury Park Press. Mr. MacArthur spent Wednesday afternoon calling his constituents to explain the tax bill instead of going to the White House with his colleagues. He said in an interview that he plans to propose ways for House Republicans to make the bill's benefits clear to the public. The bill needs to be made transparent to the American people. He said, all of the noise of the apocalypse is going to look pretty silly. House Democrats were unanimous in their opposition and are expected to argue next year that the tax cuts don't do much for most people. Still, Democrat pollster Geoff Jerem said the difference in after-tax income for most taxpayers will be too small to make a difference in their political preference, or even for some to notice. Bill Republican pollster said the tax bill probably won't immediately improve his party's political standing. Instead, he said market gains and a declining unemployment rate give some potential hope for the Republicans. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said he believes the bill is simple sell for his party. If we can't sell this to the American people, he said, we ought to go into another line of work. Okay, that's it.
There you go, folks. There you go. Trump moving forward with the tax plan, passing it and getting it set. Very interesting. Another article here on GOA.org. House to vote today on gun bill. Yesterday, the House Rules Committee voted to combine the Reciprocity and Anti-Gun Fix-Nix bills, H.R. 30 and H.R. 4477. The combined bill now goes to the House floor, with votes scheduled for today.
Is that an old story? Didn't they already vote that?
Oh, yes, they did. They vote that through the House.
And it's in the Senate now.
They have to get that through the Senate.
Yes. So that's the problem, though. They combined the Reciprocity and the Fix-Nix bill, which you earlier read about that. So it's basically a poison pill, because if the Senate passes the House bill as it was passed, they received it, then we'll have both the Reciprocity, yes, but then we'll have the
Fix-Nix bill.
Fix-Nix bill with people getting their guns taken away for a traffic ticket. So not a good situation.
It's a bad situation. There it is. They mention it right here. They complain, including, because the bill was a poison pill that would kill the Fix-Nix legislation. This is what Representative Democrat of Nevada said. She announced that she wanted to offer an amendment to strike the concealed carry language, a request that was denied by the committee. Outside of Congress, Moms Action does not want a combined bill because they want a Fix-Nix bill without Reciprocity. You can see their tweet here.
And we want Reciprocity without Fix-Nix.
Fix-Nix, exactly.
So it's a poison pill both sides.
This is the problem. You have to give some to get some, as they say in Washington. And it's just this endless, ridiculous war between the left and the right. It's just so sick. And, American people are getting sick of this. They're getting sick of this because this country was almost stolen by Hillary Clinton and the leftist commies and the neocons who collude with them, the two-party duopoly. The reality of the matter is that this is how they always get, laws passed, but then they get their illegal, unconstitutional laws in there as well. Trump, of course, is pushing, hey, let's get Reciprocity, and then let's work on Fix-Nix. Let's gain momentum, and then let's do this. And, of course, this is the trend that we have to work through in quote, democracies. But there's always a threat of losing, of degrading into mob rule. And as long as they have 51%, they can vote to destroy any human right, any unconstitutional right, anything. They can amend the Constitution. They can change it. It's just so wicked. And of course, in the end, people are exposed to that danger at all times. Gun owners should realize the silver lining that has emerged. The combined bill has tremendously frustrated the anti-gun left because now they fear the Nix bill is dead if the House passes the bill today, which they passed. The two provisions, both good and bad, have now been joined together in H.R. 38. The House is scheduled to vote and has voted. Gun owners will surely want to know what happens next. Do we know when that's going to be ready for the Senate? Well, if the House, as recently as yesterday, Senator Chris Murphy said that such a combined bill would be dead on arrival in the Senate. Will the Senate move quickly to fix Nix? When asked by the Daily Caller if Senator Cornyn preferred to wait until the next Congress to pass concealed carry reciprocity, Cornyn replied, "Well, I want to get this background check problem fixed as soon as possible, hopefully even this week here in the Senate, and I don't want to do anything such as reciprocity to bog down our ability to get that done. I do think at some point we should take up constitutional carry because I think it's important, but combining them I think is to risk nothing happening. If the Senate were to pass a standalone Nix bill, the House would most likely agree to it and send it to President Trump. So if the House defeats the bill, we will have to expand a Herculean effort in trying to kill the traffic ticket gun ban, which they're already doing. We will be calling on all our members to bombard their legislators in opposition to the bill that sadly has tremendous support in Congress. Things are happening quickly. Please stay tuned for more details as they become available." And that was Eric Pratt, the son of Larry Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America. So very, very, very dangerous. In other top news, on December 14, 2017, CNN's Jim Acosta claimed America has witnessed 1,552 mass shootings since the heinous attack on Sandy Hook Elementary School. This means Acosta is claiming an average of approximately 310 mass shootings a year for each of the past 5 years. It is important to note, and this is now linked to Breitbart, it is important to note that he attempts to bolster this claim via information provided by a tracking site sponsored by gun controllers. That tracking site, the Gun Violence Archive, diverges from FBI definition of mass shooting as 4 fatalities or more in one incident, so as to include shootings in which no fatalities occur.
What?
This definition that Acosta uses diverges from FBI definition of mass shooting, which they define as 4 fatalities in more in one incident. But they want it, the Acosta is claiming the shootings which include shootings in which no fatalities occur. Okay? So where nobody's killed, he also considers that a mass shooting. There he is tweeting the lie. Look at that. Total lie. What a freaking lie. Other members of the left have been spewing similar numbers for years. At times, their claims have gotten so outlandish that members of their own circles have called them out for it. For example, in December 2005, Breitbart News reported that Mother Jones editor Mark Folman called out leftists for claiming 355 mass shootings in the calendar year alone. Folman published a column in the New York Times which said, "At Mother Jones, where I work as an editor, we have compiled an in-depth open-source database covering more than 3 decades of public mass shootings. By our measure, there have been 4 mass shootings this year, including the one in San Bernardino, and at least 73 such attacks since 1982. Note, using the actual FBI definition of mass shootings, Folman could only find 4 mass shootings for the entire year, yet leftists were claiming 355. See how much they lie about their facts? Think about it this way. It is easy to swell the number of car accidents recorded for a given year if butterflies hitting the windshield are counted as an accident. Moreover, it is easy to swell the number of falls recorded every year if stumbling without actually falling is counted as a fall nonetheless. Those are beautiful examples. If you could say every time a butterfly or insects hit a vehicle, that is a car accident, well, then you have millions of car accidents, wouldn't you? See that? Or if you had people fell, but they didn't actually fall, they caught their balance, but yet you can say that's a fall, then the numbers would grow. Here you have them claiming 355 mass shootings when there were only 4. In the same way, it is easy to swell the number of mass shootings if the definition of mass shootings is changed so as to include street crimes in which no one is killed, or by including the life of the attacker in the reported number of deaths resulting from an alleged shooting. The Gun Violence Archive does both these things, and Acosta's tweet ultimately rests on that approach to claim 1,552 mass shootings during the past 5 years. They're open to lying about anything to get their disarmament agenda through. Because in the end, they are totalitarians, and collectivists are totalitarians who seek to disarm the public so as we have no more means to stand up against their tyranny. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Let love explode and bring the dead to life. A love so bold to see a revolution somehow. Let love explode and bring the dead to life. A love so bold to bring a revolution somehow. Now I'm lost in your freedom, and this world I'll overcome. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. Let hope arise and make the darkness hide. My faith is dead, I need a resurrection somehow. Now I'm lost in your freedom, and this world I'll overcome. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. He's roaring. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living. ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion.
At break of day, in hope we rise. We speak your name.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, Thursday, December 21st, 2017. Back with our Rima today, Psalm 85. You, Lord, showed favor to your land. You restored the fortunes of Jacob. You forgave the iniquity of your people and covered all their sins. You set aside all your wrath and turned from your fierce anger. Restore us again, God our Savior, and put away your displeasure toward us. Will you be angry with us forever? Will you prolong your anger through all generations? Will you not revive us again, that your people may rejoice in you, showing us your unfailing love, Lord, and grant us your salvation. Amen. This is it, folks. In the end, God will decide. The kingdom of God is a vastly different place from the communist socialist utopias that have been promised to humanity, only to turn to murderous genocidal realities which oppress and quash any remnant of human freedom and responsibility. It's always sold as a nice little pretty package with hammer and sickle attached to it, the most murderous symbol of the 20th century. And young, brainwashed children who are in a cult of competing with one another, of virtue signaling and moral posturing, of course, are indoctrinated into these cults. But God is in control in the end, and his kingdom will come, where all these remnants will be vanquished and destroyed from the earth. And God's people and God's nation, the New Jerusalem, the new world, the new Eden, where God will not rule as a tyrant or despot, as many Christians believe. It's totally heretical Christian belief, and it's totally hypocritical Christian belief, that they believe when Jesus returns, he'll come back and he'll kick some ass straight, which he will. And of course, but then he'll rule as a tyrant and a despot. Absolutely ridiculous. It will be the New Jerusalem and the New Eden, where God will rule in his nature, which is not as a tyrant, which is not as a despot. Look how he ruled in Eden. He ruled with freedom, sovereignty, and responsibility. And in the kingdom, that is the state of affairs. There is freedom, there is sovereignty, and there is responsibility. And that's why the Constitution of the Kingdom of God, Cheonryuguk Constitution, the United States of Cheonryuguk, clearly articulates the actual political fabric of the Kingdom of God, where natural rights are protected, freedom of speech and press and private property ownership and freedom to defend yourself. These are rights given to us by God. Freedom from taxations, etc. Income tax, you name it. Burdensome, ridiculous new taxes that come up with every single day. The only reason why in the Constitution there's a sales tax is because you're dealing with private citizens and private property owners who then are essentially making a compact with one another to have a tax for using their land to sell and start business, etc. To allow businesses to operate off that land. But you don't have income tax. It's illegal. Inheritance tax is illegal. Death tax is illegal. Estate tax is illegal. Land tax is illegal. Because it fulfills the biblical teachings, the biblical principles of what you sow, you shall reap. That what a man raises from the sweat of his brow, he keeps. And it's not robbed from him by coercion and force to instill and install more bureaucracy, more lifetime career politicians, more careerism, and more crony capitalism. The kingdom of God is a place of freedom and responsibility where we serve the King of Kings as kings and queens, co-heirs with Christ, with the rule of the rod of iron. One of the responsibilities of the kingdom is, of course, to have the peace police, be militia, and the armed civilian population, which serve as the protectors of the villages, neighborhoods, towns, you name it. Ultimately, collectively, the nation. In other top news, but more lighthearted news, eating salad every day keeps brains 11 years younger and prevents dementia, a study shows. So eat your salad. Salads are absolutely good for you. Trade the ginkgo biloba for a bag of spinach during your next stop at the store. Leafy greens may be your best resource for boosting memory. In the quest to remain young, many have turned to supplements such as fish oil and vitamin B12 to stave off dementia or simply remember where we put the car keys. And with population projections indicating an increase in Alzheimer's disease across the world, researchers are looking for ways to prevent cognitive decline and a possible health crisis, etc. Nutritional epidemiologist Martha Claire Morris and her team at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago found that people who ate 1 to 2 servings of leafy green vegetables each day experienced fewer memory problems and cognitive decline compared to people who rarely ate spinach. In fact, Morris estimates that veggie lovers who included about 1.3 servings a day into their diets had brains that were roughly 11 years younger compared to those who consumed the least amount of foods like spinach or kale. You see, kids, why Daddy makes you eat your salad? The study included 960 people, all between 58 through 99 years old, and all without dementia. Everyone enrolled in the study was part of the memory and aging process, which has been ongoing since 1979, the Knight's Alzheimer's Disease Project. There's an example of a beautiful leafy green. That's kale and that's spinach, and that looks delicious with raisins and is that feta cheese? Some kind of cheese, and what is that? What is that? Pomegranate, and you've got the pine nuts in there. And actually, what is this? This got what's that? Couscous or something like that? Some kind of grain in there. Very nice salad. But it's not only leafy greens, not just leafy greens that could potentially keep our memories alive. According to Morris, the nutrients found in these vegetables may be responsible for the brain-boosting benefits. All are found in other food sources too. Some of the nutrients already have excellent scientific evidence, such as vitamin E, a potent antioxidant, which has been demonstrated in carefully controlled animal models to protect against neuron loss, oxidative stress, and inflammation, and the accumulation of amyloid plaques. Other of the nutrients are newly identified, such as nitrate, she cited nitrate, vitamin K, and camphorol as potential contributors to brain health that warrant further examination. Because the study was observational, the data provide no concrete evidence of a causal relation between spinach and brain health. For now, the connection is only correlation and does not extend to younger or non-white or Hispanic people. But adding a serving of spinach into your diet is never a bad idea. Daily consumption of leafy greens may be a simple and effective way to protect against loss of memory and other cognitive abilities. And of course, you get a lot of different vitamins. you get a lot of healthy vitamins for your body. Most researchers used one half cup of cooked spinach as a single serving, which would have about 3.35 milligrams of vitamin E, according to the Harvard School of Public Health. Another good source of nutrient include almonds and some oils like sunflower and safflower. And there you go. There's our health section of the day. Let's go now to our international news with Tim, the Agent Elder.
Okay, so Kim Jong-un got up on the wrong side of the bed. Kim Jong-un executes nuclear base chief over tunnel collapse that killed 200. Defector tells Japanese media. The Tubby Tyrant, this is in the Sun, British paper, the Tubby Tyrant is feared to have purged one of his top men over the disaster caused during a nuclear test. Kim Jong-un is feared to have executed the official responsible for a reported nuclear test site tunnel collapse, which killed 200 people, the defector has claimed. Park In-young was the chief of North Korea's Bureau 131, which was charged with supervising military facilities like Pyongyeri underground site. An unnamed defector said that Park was purged in the latest handing out of discipline by the Tubby Tyrant, Asahi.com reports. The exact motive for the alleged execution remains unclear, but it is thought that it could be related to the tunnel collapse, which delayed the test launch of the Hermit Kingdom's most powerful weapon to date. A test of an H-bomb caused a 6.3 magnitude earthquake, causing the tunnel to collapse on October 10th. The disaster prompted fears of a massive radioactive leak, which could spark a Chernobyl or Fukushima-style disaster. A North Korean official said the collapse happened during the construction of an underground tunnel. South Korea's Yonhap news agency reported. Lee Eugene, a spokeswoman at South Korea's unification ministry, said, "We are aware of the report, but do not know anything about it." The news comes less than a week after the second most powerful man in North Korea, in quotes, was revealed to have disappeared from public life, sparking speculation he may have been executed by death squads. General Hwang Pyeong-so once held the most senior military position in the Hermit Kingdom, Hermit State, as the vice marshal of the supreme leader. But now he has been expelled from the party for, quote, taking bribes, unquote, and has not been seen since October. His deputy, Kim Won-hong, is said to have been banished to a prison camp, the South Korean Chungang-ilbo reported. If Hwang was indeed kicked out of the Workers' Party, it would practically mean the end to his political career and possibly his life, though it is unknown whether or not he is still alive. Last week, Kim visited Korea's most mystical mountain, Mount Paektu, something he typically does before ordering the death of his top brass. Earlier today, it was reported that a defector claimed the state had assembled a squad of suicide bombers who have nuclear backpacks.
So what they've been talking about, boy, oh boy, it's not that, unfortunately, it's that dirty and that low tech.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Chu Il-kim, a defector who lives in New Malden, South London, said the brainwashed fighters who will live or die for Kim Jong-un. The bombers were assembled because the Jong-un's military is not strong enough to simply nuke their rivals, Mr. Kim told Express.co.uk. He said the top-level leaders won't wage war. They know they can't win the war. But Kim Jong-un and also previous Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung were known to take orphans who have no family ties or anything like that, don't know their parents, and are loyal only to the supreme leader, and to give them these kinds of special assignments, suicide assignments. I don't know if that's the case here.
Well, it's interesting. Even Plato talked about the Republic, that basically all citizens and all families have been broken up, and the state has to own the children, so as not only for other things, but they have to own the children essentially for a state of in the state of a war. And this is what the leftist lunatics always believe. Of course, the state owns the children. They have no real protection for their parents or families. And then, of course, they're sex trafficked. These deviants within the bureaucracies do whatever the hell they want with them. I mean, this is such a dangerous situation. The natural protectors of children are their parents, dad and mom, and their grandparents and extended family. That is the natural protective unit, and that is the dangerous protective unit against collectivists and tyrants and authoritarian totalitarians. In other news, look at this. North Korea soldier flees to South Korea via DMZ. So, December 21st, a North Korean soldier fled to South Korea through the demilitarized zone, the inter-Korean and land border. Thursday, followed by gunfire from both sides, the South's military said. The low-ranking soldier appeared in the front of the guard post on the Midwestern front at around 8:04 amid thick fog, according to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. After the defection, the North Border Guards approached a military demarcation line, apparently in search of the defector, a JCS official told reporters. In response, the South's troops fired some 20 warning shots at around 9:30 a.m. Roughly 40 minutes later, there was a sound of several gunshots from the north, but no bullets were found to have crossed the border, he added.
So probably someone was executed, I think. You know, if they heard shots but didn't come across the border, then probably they were shooting at someone inside their own ranks. Mm-hmm. So whoever was responsible for the person who defected. Also, what bothers me about that story is that he appeared in front of a guard post. In the past, we've had North Korean defectors appear in front of civilian homes. Knock, knock, can I please defect? The defense along that border is not always airtight.
It's not so good, right?
Yes.
In a separate announcement, the Unification Ministry said 2 North Korean people aboard a small wooden boat defected to the south on Wednesday. The Navy found it in waters about 100 kilometers north of Tokdo during a patrol mission, a ministry official said. A joint probe into the details of their identities is underway. The North Korean men expressed their intent to defect and agreed to abandon the aged and apparently damaged ship. Last month, a North Korean soldier made a successful dash to the south via the truce village of Panmunjom after suffering multiple gunshot wounds fired by the communist nation's border guards. An official tally of the JCS shows that 15 North Korean people, including 4 soldiers, have fled to the south this year versus 1 soldier and 4 civilians in 2016. So again, proof that the folks in North Korea are, of course, as Tim said this morning, encountering a harsh, brutal winter. You know, the guy who ran away, they actually captured film him. You guys type in North Korea defector on film, video of North Korea defector. He's the one that I think he got shot.
5 times.
Shot 5
he took
times.
5 bullets, yeah.
Yeah.
But he still survived, and he's alive now. He was helicoptered to a South Korean hospital, and he survived. Yeah.
And they actually did a study on the food contents of his stomach, and they were literally starvation level foods in there. Like there was like rats or something, and there was bark, tree bark. It was literally scavenging food.
And this is the military that's supposed to get priority.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. So think about how devastating the poverty is. Oh, there it is. There.
And especially, he was at the Joint Security Area, which is
Go ahead, play that.
which is a high profile.
Look at him. There he is running.
There, that's
he
the
is
man.
running.
Yeah, that's the
There
man
he
right
gets-
there.
He starts getting shot at.
Yeah.
Good morning, George. We've talked so much about threats from North Korea's leaders that got clear from the video.
Hopefully they'll play the clip. But anyways, that was actual. Oh, there it is. There. That's the actual photo, caught on camera.
Line that divides the 2 nations.
He
sets
starts
out
running here.
running as the North Korean guards begin shooting. Dozens of rounds fired at the defector, even as he crosses that crucial line to freedom.
At some point there, the North Korean soldiers see him and see what he's doing, and they start firing at him multiple rounds and hitting him, and he still survives enough to crawl to safety to get behind a wall.
Critically wounded, shot 5 or 6 times. Heat signature from cameras show 2 South Korean security forces crawling towards the defector to carry him out and evacuate him to a nearby medical center.
He lay there for about 40 minutes before people could go there and drag him to the South Koreans.
The murderous repression.
He was across the line.
In addition to the bullet wounds, he had
They-
severe
The
parasitic
more murderous
infections
repression that these
from
leftists
water
talk
or
about,
food that was
which they covered
contaminated.
for and did
Doctors
nothing
described
about
that
under
as
Obama for 8 years.
Yeah.
They did nothing about it, and they armed them with the Clintons in 97, 98. These idiots are constantly trying to warmonger. We don't want a big war, but they've left this untouched for the last freaking 20, 30 years, and it's now getting to the point where it's just unavoidable. Trump is this issue with the North Korea, of course, now doing more ICBM tests, preparing for a nuclear test. Boy, oh boy, what's Trump going to do? What's Trump going to do? I mean,
Yeah,
it's such a terrible situation.
as president, he has to protect the American people. China and Russia have a capability to attack the United States. North Korea wants to become the third country. So is Trump going to sit by and let that happen? I don't think that would be responsible for whoever's in the president's position.
It is a serious, serious situation which continues to escalate. But again,
Especially since North Korea is known to sell weapons of this type to terrorist groups.
right, and now they're talking about the
Yeah.
backpack nuclear bomb
Yes.
that they're now preparing. In other top news, North Korean soldiers chased defecting comrade across DMZ. Troops crossed into South Korea in pursuit about an hour after defection. North Korean soldiers crossed into South Korea early Thursday in pursuit of a comrade who has defected across the heavily guarded demilitarized zone about an hour earlier, etc. The junior ranking defector was detected by South Korean surveillance as he dashed across the northwestern portion of DMZ about 8 a.m.
I don't know, dash, he probably crawled. But anyway, reporters like to put in verbs like that. He probably crawled across, he snuck across. Because they didn't even see him until he appeared in front of the guard post.
How'd that happen?
It
He
happens.
just showed up. Whoa, who's this dude? Hey, wait.
Yeah, it happens a lot, or not a lot, but it happens from time to time, and it's kind of scary.
From Cub Fever to slamming CNN, Trump's year-end tweets. Another story, top news on dredgereport.com. With a generous helping of exclamation points, all caps, spelling errors, 2017 was the first year of the first Twitter presidency. And in a way, President Trump's most popular tweets of the year tell the story of his presidency. These statements on Twitter gave Americans and the world unprecedented real-time view of what Trump was thinking, stewing over, and watching on cable. My use of social media is not presidential, it's modern-day presidential, Trump's account tweeted on July 1st, finishing with a flourish that appeared often in his tweets, "Make America Great Again." Trump made policy, or at least tried to, via Twitter. For example, the transgender military ban was announced in a series of tweets before his communications team and Defense Department were prepared to respond. He taunted adversaries, domestic and international, endorsed candidates, some who won, two who lost in the same Senate race, played media critic, catered to his base supporters, and more than anything, drove news cycles and American conversation day in and day out. That's right. He drove the news. Trump drove the news. He's brilliant. He bypassed the media and the controlled narrative leftist lunatic think tank organizations paid for by George Soros.
He also
he
drove a lot of
bypassed them
people
all.
crazy.
As explained to Mario Bartiromo of Fox Business in late October, when I put it out, you put it immediately on your show. I mean, the other day I put something out. 2 seconds later, I'm watching your show. It's up. It's the president's way of going around the media filter directly to his voters, while at the same time reaching broad swaths of news consumers who may not even have accounts on the social network. The most retweeted was the wrestling video, a tweet slamming CNN's set of widespread criticism, with some suggesting that the president was promoting violence against the media. It featured a 28-second video of Trump in 2007 body slamming a man on WWE's WrestleMania. It has been doctored so the man's head is covered by the CNN logo. We all saw that one. Name calling Kim. While on trips to Asia in November, Trump shot off a provocative tweet aimed at the leader in North Korea, Kim Jong-un. This apparently came in response to a statement from the state-run Korean Central News Agency, which went further than simply calling Trump old, as Trump claims in the tweet. The agency described Trump, according to one translation, as a lunatic old man. Trump called him Little Rocket Man, and he called him, I believe, in that one, what did he call him again? Oh, he said he wouldn't call him fat. He wouldn't call him short and fat.
He did not call him short and fat. I would never call him short and fat, he said.
Exactly. Cove Fever. The tweet was posted at 12:06 and immediately became an internet sensation because it didn't make any sense. Some wondered whether the president was okay or whether he had just fallen asleep mid-tweet. The mysteries of Cove Fever were never solved. Then Press Secretary Sean Spicer barely even tried to explain to Tom reporters, "I think the president and a small group of people know exactly what he meant." The tweet was deleted a few hours later, and yet remarkably, the error of a tweet remains the president's third most retweeted post of 2017. Trump on Saudi Arabia, follow-up to Kofiv. Trump quickly tweeted a cleanup on Al Kofiv. This whole thing was such an internet sensation that it was printed on T-shirts and turned into memes. Response to women's marches, the college basketball players responding to terrorist attack in London, etc. And there you go. That is sort of a year in review of President Trump's tweets. Also, Telegraph reports that Japan warns of a pending megaquake, as large as one that caused Fukushima meltdown. Here are some of the images on the devastating 2001 earthquake and tsunami. Japanese government experts have warned that a megaquake as large as 2011's disaster may hit the country's northernmost region within the next 30 years. Okay, in the next 30 years. I thought it was tomorrow. An impending earthquake is forecast to strike off the Pacific coastline of Hokkaido, Japan's northernmost island, most likely triggering massive tsunami within the coming 3 decades. The government's Earthquake Research Committee predicted a 70% chance of magnitude 8 to 8.6 earthquake hitting the Nemuro area in eastern Hokkaido with this time scale. A panel also cited 40% likelihood of a magnitude 9 earthquake across the eastern Hokkaido region within the next 3 decades, with potential impact on nearby Aomori Prefecture, home to nuclear power plants. The study was based on historical data, which found that a huge earthquake occurred around 400 years ago along Hokkaido's eastern coastline, according to Kyodo News Agency. The research carried out by experts at Hokkaido University also concluded the area was historically hit by large tremors on a cycle lasting between 340 to 80 years. There's the Nemuro region here. I hope disaster preparations are reviewed based on the possibility that a supergigantic quake like the one that struck the Tohoku region could also strike Hokkaido. A seismology professor says at University of Tokyo and chairman of the panel's Earthquakes Research Committee told Asian newspaper, "Here's some more images of the subsequent flooding at the Fukushima plant caused a meltdown." Look at that, some of that flooding. One of the world's riskiest cities when it comes to natural disasters. Here's a list with Tokyo. Each city is ranked according to its potential for earthquakes, storms, surges, tsunamis, and river floods. Wow. Tokyo, Yokohama, named as the world's riskiest cities when it comes to natural disaster.
Yeah, because they have the bay there, and so the tsunamis, they go and the bay contracts it, makes it grow larger, higher, as the water goes in towards the Tokyo.
That's amazing. So that's 51.1. Second, coming up in second place, Manila, Philippines. Pearl River Delta, China. Osaka, Kobe, Japan. Jakarta, Indonesia. Nagoya, Japan. Kolkata, India. Shanghai, Los Angeles, and Tehran, Iran. There you go. Disasters also triggered a nuclear crisis. This is about the Fukushima. So big earthquakes coming up on the horizon, at least 30-year horizon, for Japan. We'll be back after this short break. Let's take a break now, and we'll be back more with NRA TV. Dennis Santiago, CA ammo sales spike before gun controls kick in. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Struggle. There was a lot of things I really liked about Diella from the very beginning. You know, I loved her passion, the way she sang to the church, the loyalty she had to her parents, and you know, I really wanted somebody who's loyal to True Father, and I knew if she's loyal to her parents, that's a good sign. And the one memory I really have, it really helped me really decide I really want to get blessed to her. was she said that I'd always be second, and she'd always put God before me. And I knew if she was willing to put God before me, I could like fully trust her. And that was something that really moved me to, like, I knew at that point, like, I wanted to get blessed to her.
Okay, so at first when we met, we completely put each other in boxes, the famous box. And I don't know, I was praying and praying and praying, and I was just not sure in the beginning. We both weren't, and we just continued talking, but for some reason it just didn't seem to work because we were just too focused on ourselves, I think. So, but I kept praying, and then one day I was very frustrated, and I even talked with my mom, and she told me, you know what, Diala, I can see he really loves God. And if he loves God, he can fully love you. And I think that's what I needed to hear, and from that moment on, everything changed.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, Thursday, December 21st, 2017. Broadcasting live from the Chanigung studios. December 21st will be the worst day of 2017. That's what astrologers say. And that's as we become neo-pagan, which means basically pagan. People literally believe in these astrologers telling them these ridiculous things. Listen to this, what they're saying. The winter solstice, also known as Yule, midwinter, the shortest day of the year, etc. This day may, but the short little day with the great many names may also be the worst day of the year. According to astrologers, the reason, Saturn. Apparently the sun will appear to pass in front of the constellation Capricorn hours after Saturn does likewise. This will cause both of these orbs to line up for the first time since 1664. According to London astrologer Neil Spencer, who writes for the London Observer but first wrote about the alignment on his blog. He insists that starting something new on this day is ill-advised and will have long-term consequences. Anything you try to do Thursday will be more difficult than usual, take more time, and be more frustrating. Perhaps that's why the president probably won't sign the tax bill Thursday.
That's not the reason.
And Congress has its paperwork to process. Even though Spencer said that establishment patriarchy, big business property will be in front center in the cosmos. Toss in all of that holiday traffic. It's gridlock alert today, just about everywhere. According to INRIX, a company that analyzes transportation data, patience will not be a priority, especially if we are told that we have to do something by our superiors. Lunar Living astrology website says we may be perceived as insubordinate, be ready to deal with the repercussions of the rebellion. What? Yet you can take solace in a winter solstice celebration in New Grange in County Meath, Ireland, which is being streamed live to the world 3:30 to 4:15 to Thursday. The entrance to the monument, which has been a retaining wall made of quartz cobblestones, is aligned with the rising sun on the winter solstice as the sun comes up between 8:30 and 9:15 a.m. So, other pagan superstitions. Also, FDA announces plans to target risky homeopathic remedies. There you go, the trustworthy FDA in the pocket of Monsanto, yes. Yes. Of course they want to go after naturopathics because these are just herbs that grow. They want to go after risky naturopathics because they've just been used for thousands of years to heal as healing remedies. They just want to go after them because, they're so dangerous. All our ancestors, all our tribal ancestors have used them as medicinals. But of course, we shouldn't have any alternatives to the medical tyranny and the medical establishment because we all should be put on those medical payrolls, essentially, death rows, where 70,000 per year die in medical facilities, many times by contracting other illnesses from other patients. FDA, with Michael Taylor there, Obama holdover, head of Monsanto's, legal counsel, was a lawyer for Monsanto, and that idiot is actually in the FDA. How ridiculous is that? How trustworthy is that? That he's in the pocket of Bill Gates, the one who has maimed people allegedly with all his poisonous vaccines that have now maimed over 70,000 people in India. And he gets off the hook scot-free because these elites are above the law, and that's why they want to keep it like that. Just ridiculous. Absolutely absurd. Why are they going after homeopathic treatments? People should be able to freely choose what kind of remedies they want to use for their ailments. If we don't want to put non-GMO, if we don't want to put chemicals and GMO products and biohazards into our bloodstream, why is that bad? If we want an alternative, we should be able to choose to buy alternatives. The FDA doesn't have any business coming in and trying to regulate that and saying people can't choose what remedies they trust. If you trust homeopathic methods, that's up to you. It's your life. The government can't force you and tell you that you must use its vaccines and you must use its pharmaceutical medicine. The naturopathic, homeopathic remedies are a humongous growing industry that is a direct competition to the monopolistic nature of pharmaceutical medical cartels. People should be able to choose what type of medicines they put into their bodies and what type of remedies they're going to pursue. Alternative remedies like homeopathic treatments have become popular in recent years, make up a $3 billion industry. And that's why the food FDA is coming after them. Oh, it could be dangerous to vulnerable public. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, that's why people are buying them, and that's why people are recommending them, and that's why people are continuing to grow that industry, right? Because it must be so dangerous. Well, it's dangerous to the monopolies, and it's dangerous to Monsanto and freaking Michael Taylor and the stupid FDA, which is simply a monopolistic protector, a protector of pharmaceutical monopolies. It's a complete sham, a complete totalitarian arm of the federal bureaucracies, the political Satanists. Give me a break. Many homeopathic remedies are derived from plants and claim to treat everything from the common cold to serious disease. And why do people keep buying them? Because they work. They work. Many of these remedies work. Not all, but many. But the FDA fears that these products can bring little to no benefit in combating serious illness, or worse, may cause significant or irreparable harm because the products are poorly manufactured or contain active ingredients that aren't adequately tested or disclosed to patients. Well, that's why there's the idea in the free market as reputation. And you have a good reputation of showing your clients how you produce your materials, your standards of testing, your certifications through a private analysis corporate companies or whatever they are, trusted non-GMO brands that test for non-GMO testing, you name it. I mean, this is a million times better that people are able to choose between pharmaceutical medicines, which are complete chemicals and poisons and tons of side effects, and homeopathic. If you don't believe in homeopathic, eat all the pharmaceuticals you want. But for people who believe in homeopathics and use them to great effect, I mean, I use homeopathic, natural, organic apple cider vinegar, and I haven't got any colds for the last couple of years. Even when my immune system feels like it's dropping down, or I feel like I'm getting a cold, even if I have indigestion and heartburn, bam, 1 shot glass of apple cider vinegar kills it. Now with a cold and stuff like that, you have to hit a couple more shots, but still it gets rid of it, and I don't have to take any antibiotics, I don't have to take any Tylenol, I don't have to take any cold Advil, Tylenol, cold, all this crap. I don't have to take any of those chemicals which are addictive, and those chemicals which have side effects that are deleterious to your other parts of your body. And I could just take apple cider vinegar, which is actually good for your body, helps balance out your pH in your body, and it gives me an immune system boost, and it gets rid of the cold. I mean, it's so fantastic. So if people want to use it, let them use it. Stop trying to come in there with your Monsanto agenda to keep the pharmaceutical monopoly that Bill Gates wants you to do. But recent issues concerning products for babies, including popular teething tablets, have led the agency to issue warnings. Oh, I'm sure. You know, they're so worried about babies. Always want to put those babies in to get their compassion credit and their little compassion points. I mean, they're selling organic wet tissues that have like 99.9% water. And the FDA is going to try to ban that. It's like ridiculous. These people are so ridiculous. As a result, alternative treatments targeted at young children and those suffering from cancer, heart disease, and other serious ailments will be under heavy scrutiny by the agency. Get rid of the stupid FDA. Let market product analyzing companies succeed. Don't let these stupid federal bureaucracies, this should not be a federal bureaucracy, this is ridiculous. Get rid of the damn FDA. It's a completely useless pocket pal of Monsanto in the pocket of Bill Gates and his pharmaceutical monopoly. Absolutely ridiculous. Mark Land, the president of American Association of Homeopathic Pharmacists, is concerned that this move by the FDA will affect the vast majority of homeopathic remedies available in the U.S., according to NPR. But Gottlieb feels it's important to protect the public from products that may not deliver any benefit and have the potential to harm. Well, if it's not going to provide any benefit, let them use it. If they want to use it, it may have a placebo effect. And people use them at their own risk, just as they use pharmaceuticals. You think there's no problem or health dangers with pharmaceuticals? Give me a freaking break. There's tremendous danger using those chemical poisons. Absolutely ridiculous. Massive magma pool found bubbling under in New England will spark volcanic eruption. Large mass of hot rock rising beneath New England. Scientists at Rutgers University recently discovered the large mass of boiling hot rock that stretches across Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire. It is believed it will eventually lead to a volcanic eruption as the magma nears the surface. Vadim Levin, a professor at Rutgers Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences, said the upwelling we detect is like a hot air balloon, and we infer that something is rising up through the deeper part of our planet under New England. The bad news is it's going to erupt. When will it erupt? They say. Here's some footage of other eruptions. But it won't happen for a few million years. Then it's not news, okay? So ridiculous. Also, another news that we covered a few days ago, but up here, this is from December 10th, is the news of the 2 suspects that break into the home of Korean War veteran, and only one lives to tell the tale. Another story of a gun owner fighting back. Also, U.S. Democrats call for gun control action. Here's Eric Pratt on CNN International debating the Las Vegas shooting. Let's take a look at this. We have audio or no?
Politicizing the tragedy. Eric Pratt, isn't that inevitable? You say it's politicizing, but now, surely, or at least in short order, is the right moment to have a measured debate on sensible gun reform in America. Surely now is the time.
Go back to Britain.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on. But a couple things to your question. I mean, for starters, we do have a constitution which says that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Secondly, none of the proposals that they are raising would have actually stopped this guy from doing what he did. And what that shows is they will use whatever tragedy to then trot out all the restrictions that they've wanted to impose for years, but none of them, not a one, they talk about universal background checks. Well, guess what? This shooter passed background checks to buy his firearm. So how would having universal background checks fared any better?
All right, so I take your point. In this particular case, every single possible reform would have been there. But let's talk on the bigger issue. This country has a rate of deaths by homicide, not including suicide, you know these numbers better than I do, 25 times greater than the nearest neighbor, or the nearest other country. It has 10 homicides per 100,000 of the population. The nearest one is somewhere down from a Western country, is down in the 2s and the 3s. Are you comfortable with the statistics as they are?
I'm not comfortable with the way you're distorting the statistics. If you look at the statistics, the United States is not even in the top 100 when it comes to the highest murder rates. And all those countries that are in the top 100 have much stricter gun control. Mexico, you mentioned the nearest countries to us. Mexico has a much higher murder rate than we do. Much stricter gun control. How about Venezuela? They not only ban firearms, they completely confiscate. They have the gun control that you would love. They have confiscated. Will you please let me finish? They have confiscated firearms, and yet their murder rate is 20 times higher than the United States.
You're comparing Venezuela to the United States. Why don't you compare the United States to the other G7 countries, or even
So you want to cherry pick your data, in other words. Even though we're not even in the top 100, you want to trot out the select few. We have states in this country, by the way, that have lower murder rates than England and all the other countries of Europe, like New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, okay, you can carry a firearm concealed without getting permission. And their murder rate is below 1 per 100,000. It is lower. I mean, it would be the dream of Europe. But see, gun control in Europe has not stopped mass shootings from occurring. In fact, what you see is that Europe, many of the countries have a much higher mass shooting rate. Okay, when you look at rate per capita, they have high, I mean, look,
Which country, sir? Which country in Europe has a higher
France, Finland, Norway, Serbia, Albania, okay? France, Finland, Norway, Serbia.
Your France analogy allows for the ISIS terrorist activities. It is not based on simple gun control.
No, look, France, in 1 year, they lost more people to mass shootings than in all the U.S. mass shootings during Obama's presidency, and they have far stricter gun control. They have bans on machine guns. You can't carry firearms, and yet terrorists got guns. They got machine guns, and they shot up the place. And that's the problem, that terrorists and bad guys will always select places that are gun-free zones. 98% of the mass shootings in the United States occur in places that are gun-free zones where law-abiding people are not allowed to carry firearms.
So what I can hear the viewer asking, not unreasonably,
I can hear the viewer asking,
arguments,
go home,
and you've heard my arguments or discussion
red
points.
coat.
We've heard it backwards and forwards. So very simply, in a really simple way that the viewer watching around the world can understand, from a person like yourself who is a gun proponent, or at least a Second Amendment proponent, what is your answer to prevent the sort of atrocities, the sort of mass shootings that this country has, that most of the developed world does not have? What is your solution?
The problem is you guys never report on the mass shootings that are prevented by law-abiding citizens carrying concealed firearms, like the firefighter in South Carolina that stopped the school mass shooting, or like the guy in the bar in Arlington, Texas, who stopped a mass shooting because he was carrying a firearm concealed. You guys never want to report on that, even though Obama's Center for Disease Control in 2013, they found that guns are used 16 to 100 times more often in this country to save life than to take life. But you guys don't report on that. You only want to trot out the negative cases. So what I would say to that question is, why don't you start covering the positive cases so then people can really make a decision based on all the evidence, not only choosing the negative examples, trotting that out and saying, well, why do you want to keep firearms?
So what would you, I'm just going to rephrase the question in a different way because I don't think you fully answered it. I take your point on board that you think we do not report in certain aspects, but what is...
But the big answer was that good people are stopping mass shootings. That's the answer. Look, you're not going to stop everything, just like, you know, a car crash could be so bad that a seatbelt doesn't work. Nobody ever said that there's...
Are you comfortable then with there being more guns in this country than population?
Well, do you know that in America, our gun stock has doubled in the last 20 years, even while gun violence and murder has been cut in half? In those 20 years, the rate has been cut in half. So we actually have more guns in the United States and less crime. So to answer your question, yes, I'm comfortable with that. We are actually safer today.
And if I take your point, because I'm trying to add light, not just heat in this, you would accept that a certain level of atrocity is inevitable, even allowing for the number of non-gun... let me finish. Even allowing...
I see where you're going.
Well, I'm sure you do, because you've obviously dealt with this before. But even allowing for those crimes that are solved, or at least prevented by gun crime, you are prepared to allow...
You know why that's such an ignorant question? I'm sorry, but that is so ridiculous, because that's like saying because that guy in France used his truck to run over 86 people, now we should ban vehicles and cars. And because on 9/11, terrorists used box cutters, now let's ban box cutters. And oh, by the way, are you willing to allow for such levels of violence? Shouldn't we restrict cars and trucks? And shouldn't we restrict box cutters? Shouldn't we restrict the fertilizer that Timothy McVeigh used in Oklahoma City? If you're not willing to ban them, how heartless are you that you're willing to allow a certain level of atrocity? See how ridiculous that argument is when I spin it back on you? Or how about your free speech? Your free speech has resulted in millions of people being killed. How about ideas like Mein Kampf and radical Islam? That has led to the slaughter of thousands and millions of people. Do you see the problem? If we're going to start restricting liberties, where do you stop?
Sir, you're getting
Where do you stop?
You're getting excited, and it's not helpful. May I
He's
suggest
kicking
to you
your ass,
that on your
Brit.
point that you've just made, firstly, with box
destroying
cutters,
you,
yes, they did
logically.
ban them on aircraft because following 9/11. On the question of trucks and Paris and Berlin and in London, yes, law enforcement is now having to look at what measures are necessary to prevent crimes that can be committed by using these vehicles. So, sir, you've argued against yourself because law enforcement is building...
No, I haven't, because you haven't answered me. Are you willing to put up with restrictions on all those items, including your free speech?
I'm willing to take your point, because I'm trying to add light, not just heat in this. You would accept that a certain level of atrocity is inevitable, even allowing for the number of non-gun... let me finish. Even
I
allowing...
see where you're going.
Well, I'm sure you do, because you've obviously dealt with this before. But even allowing for those crimes that are solved, or at least prevented by gun crime, you are prepared to allow...
You know why that's such an ignorant question? I'm sorry, but that is so ridiculous, because that's like saying because that guy in France used his truck to run over 86 people, now we should ban vehicles and cars. And because on 9/11, terrorists used box cutters, now let's ban...
Yeah, they're repeating that statement, I guess, for emphasis. But you can see how he just completely tore up that CNN host. British host. How dare these Brits come and try to lecture us on how to run a country? They're the reason why we fled Britain and set up the most free and prosperous society in humanity's history. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us with more on the King's Report.
revolution somehow. And love explode and bring the dead to life. A love so bold to bring a revolution somehow. Now I'm lost in your freedom. And this world I'll overcome. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. Let hope arise and make the darkness hide. My faith is dead, I need a resurrection somehow. Now I'm lost in your freedom. And this world I'll overcome. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. He's roaring. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. Let hope arise and make the darkness hide. My faith is dead, I need a resurrection somehow. Now I'm lost in your freedom, and this world I'll overcome. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. He's roaring. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion.
Yes, it's a blessing of marriage, but you know, the blessing of marriage is supposed to be full of joy unspeakable.
I mean, the blessing itself is amazing. I mean, it was a very special experience. I mean, it was the biggest day of my life. And we had all our family there. People came from all the way from Colorado. This one couple even from Colorado came like last minute. They took like a bus to get here, and I just felt like so much love from friends, family. I felt God's love. I mean, I just couldn't believe that I was getting blessed. You know, like that day finally came, and I was just totally peaceful and excited, and it was an amazing experience.
Well, for me, there was one particular moment. First of all, the whole ceremony, I did not have one moment the feeling it was about us.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally about true Father giving. He was the walking God on earth, giving us the blessing which we all did not. We don't deserve, basically. And it was just so beautiful to receive that, and I felt a lot of love. And there was also a moment where Hyung was saying, "Our Father is smiling," and I think he said that 3 times, and I could see that. not physically, but I could just feel him being happy, which really calmed me down and made me peaceful and happy, and it was beautiful.
All the true worshipers, we don't need no help. Just open your mouth and release that sound that's inside of you. Come on. Release your sound in here. There's beauty in my brokenness.
And we are back. Welcome back, folks. Thursday, December 21st, 2017. Sang King reporting live from the Chanigung Studios, all the kings and queens of the Kingdom of God. Good morning. It is 7:16 a.m. and we are here joined with our friend Dan Gray, who wrote for the Washington Times in the past. Started his political journey with Watergate when he was very young. Back then he was a progressive, but over time he, after the issue, the movement left him. Dan still fights for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights for equal protection under the law. And since he's now in his late 50s, for our historical heritage, Dan's been involved in NRA ILA for over 25 years, successfully sued SEIU in federal court, works closely to the Right to Work and Right to Life organizations and activists. He's been a columnist for Watchdog and the Washington Times and has spoken passionately on radio, in person, just about every liberty issue there is. Dan, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Once again, so good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to see you too.
You got a great radio voice, by the way. Did anyone tell you that?
It's the microphone, I tell you.
Hey, you know, there's so many crazy things going on. We were talking about during the break, about gun rights. Is there a feedback loop here? Is it going on? Okay. About gun rights, and we have, of course, the issue. There's a couple issues that are coming on. Just recently, a couple weeks ago, I believe it was a week ago or so, it was the reciprocity law was passed through the House, and of course that's moving on to the Senate. That's good. That's going to allow if you have a concealed carry permit, you're a law-abiding citizen in one state to be able to carry in all states, because these are supposed to be the United States of America. It's supposed to be one country, where we're able to honor the different permits, like a driving permit. You honor my PA permit if I drive in New York, New Jersey, etc. But what the left is doing is they're trying to attach this with this this Nix bill, which essentially allows them, as we were talking to the break, to take away gun rights from people with small misdemeanors. Even an unpaid traffic ticket. I'm sorry, I'm looking at different cameras here. Unpaid traffic ticket, quote, violators can have their gun rights removed. So what is the benefit of having reciprocity if you can get if they're passing another law attached to that, a poison pill, that can strip you of your gun rights and your reciprocity rights, so to speak, with like an unpaid speeding ticket?
Well, it's not really an unpaid ticket, just to be absolutely precise. What it is if you don't pay your fine, or you don't show up for court, maybe it got lost in the mail. If it's not satisfied, there could be a bench warrant out for you. This is actually just an expansion of what already exists in America. Here in Pennsylvania, 12 million citizens. There's over 1 million people, 1 million adults who can't have a gun permit. They're not violent people. They're not career criminals. They're not terrorists. They had some kind of bad experience. Maybe they made a bad decision. Maybe they were stupid. Maybe they were even bad people at one time. And they either pled guilty because they were scared, or they pled guilty because they were guilty, or they got a plea bargain. And the crime might have been minor. There are any number of minor crimes. Drunk driving has nothing to do with whether or not, if you did that, or you got in a bar fight when you're 18, any number of things. If you've had the case adjudicated, if you've done your time or your probation, then you should be clean. You should have all your rights back. The only time you should be deprived of your rights is if you're currently under sentence. You're on probation, you're incarcerated, you're on parole. I get that. But once you've been convicted or pled guilty to a crime that's punishable, not that you got that punishment, but punishable by 1 year and 1 day, you're out. You can't have a permit. What that means is you can't exercise your right to protect yourself and your family. Imagine that you had some small, minor thing 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You've been clean, you've worked your job, you've paid your taxes, you never did anything wrong again. But the law says that you can't take a gun with you when you go out to the mall with your family to go shopping or go to an event, a New Year's Eve event, a Christmas event, even though there are terrorists and there are criminals and there are crazed bad dogs. Not like
I mean, look what happened in Australia. This wasn't yesterday. Yesterday, I mean, this morning, it was a truck plowing into people again. Another incidence of jihadi terrorism.
Well, see, this is what's going to happen is that they're pushing the automated cars and they're going to say you can't drive, or actually you can't even travel if you don't have permission from the state. And any minor infraction.
North Korea worldwide. Hey.
Well, you know, here's the thing. We're all guilty. Every one of us, whether we realize it or not. And I'm not getting into religious stuff like we're all sinners, which of course we are. But when it comes to the multiple overlapping, over-criminalized laws out there that penalize every aspect of your behavior, you have, and I guarantee you, I know you're a law-abiding man. I know you're a man of God. You're a decent fellow. Everybody I know who knows you, we haven't met yet in person, but says good things about you. There's not a mark that I could see that's wrong. And I checked you out before I even appeared to be on the program the first time because I like to know who I'm associating with. You're all right. And yet, I guarantee you that sometime in the last 24 hours, you committed some felony or misdemeanor without knowing it,
right?
Without even being aware of it. Something that, and the law these days doesn't even require, in a lot of cases, mens rea, which is Latin for a guilty mind. You know, that you had to actually know what you're doing.
That the normal, law-abiding citizen in America is breaking like 24 laws a day or something like that. Just unbelievable. The laws that they're totally unaware of, and you're apparently making all these crimes. And isn't that the nature of a totalitarian regime? That's a great tactic. If you can criminalize everybody, if you want to get rid of anybody, it's so easy.
Well, it's not just that they can pick particular targets, which they can and they do. And we've seen retaliation of that nature when somebody steps out of line, when they make political waves.
Right.
But
whole groups too.
The prison industrial complex in America right now, with all these private prisons that are guaranteed a certain number of filled beds and a certain number of profit off of our tax dollars, and who use prison labor. You're talking about like a communist regime. They use it to make more money. Okay. Having inmates give financial services or operate websites, for God's sakes. I mean, this is not exactly a smart thing, but they do it. They do it, and they make money off of it. So they have to have a certain number of people in the system at all times. I know a number of people who just got unlucky. They weren't people who stepped out politically. They were just people who got unlucky with the system. They got caught for something very minor that should have been a ticket or nothing. And they got slammed. They got bullied into taking a plea bargain, lied to about what the consequences were. And once they've got you on the hook, they got you forever. Now, good luck, by the way, if besides getting carry permit, good luck getting a good job if you have a record.
I mean, philosophically, what does it mean that you lose your human rights? I mean, you lose your natural rights. These are talked about of course, with our founding fathers, that these are natural rights. These are rights that are inalienable, given to us by our Creator. How is it that if you have some misdemeanor with some, traffic ticket violation, that you lose your human rights, the values and natural rights that we have just as being created beings to be able to naturally defend ourselves? It's just any animal has that right. Any chipmunk or whatever, dog or wolf or anything in the natural world has a natural right to defend itself. How is it that you lose that philosophically? How it's just such a crazy thing if you think about it.
Well, I'll tell you, I have to say I agree with the people forfeiting losing their rights in certain circumstances for certain periods of time. If you've committed an actual crime, and to me, an actual crime is a crime where you've committed knowing harm to another or negligent harm to another. You've actually hurt somebody, you've done something, and you've had due process and a fair trial. And they don't have trials anymore. They just bully you into taking a plea bargain. And during that period of sentence where you're either incarcerated, on probation, on parole, during that period, certain of your rights should be limited. They may say that you can't leave the country or you can't leave the state. They may say that you can't associate freely with people who are criminals or who are drug users. They may say that you can't have any booze or pot or anything. If you do, you're in violation. I don't have any problem with these things. If there's a convicted murderer who's in jail, I don't want them having a gun. But once you have served your sentence, assuming it was a minor crime and you have served your sentence, what reason is there to permanently disenfranchise that person? That person can't carry a gun. They can't vote. They cannot vote. And I know there's people on the right who say, well, all these criminals, they're just going to vote Democrat anyway. I have news for you. There's plenty of decent conservatives who made a mistake or who got caught up in the system or who actually did something wrong when they were younger. And maybe they even meant it, but who aren't that way anymore. And they don't vote Democrat, but they can't vote.
Yeah, I mean, and connected to that, you have about 257,000 veterans that have lost their ability, their human right to be able to defend themselves. They've committed no wrong, other than the fact that they have, some psychiatrist or some crazy doctor that says this or that about their mental status. There's so much propaganda about veterans coming back home. The New York Times, Time Magazine, Newsweek, all these publications, totally guilty of saying that 40% of our vets have PTSD. That comes from a statement that was made, I think, by the VA that 30 to 40% have some symptoms of PTSD. That eventually got changed to 40% have PTSD when they actually said there's some symptoms, like anybody can have some symptoms.
There's something in the law that's called prior restraint, and that's something that's not permitted under English common law, under American constitutional law, under any legitimate legal system. And that says you can't say that somebody might do something pre-crime like that movie. So we have to take away their rights. Now, all those veterans you mentioned, a lot of them are not retirement age. They are still under contract with the federal government, with the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard, and they can, even the Coast Guard goes into harm's way, by the way, and they can be called into active duty service, handed an M4 fully automatic 223 machine gun, and sent into harm's way on our behalf. And yet at home, because they might do something, their rights are taken away. I mean, it's unconscionable what they're doing with these little tiny incursions. They want something reasonable. I'll tell you what, in 33, we gave them the Gun Control Act, and that was a big mistake. And year by year, in 68, there was another major gun control act, and that was a mistake. And then there was the assault weapons ban. Every time they claim these statistics that are false. If you look at the statistics that the mainstream media uses, America is one of the most violent countries out there. But what you have to do is look at where the violence is and what the violence is. Where the violence is primarily in major cities, and it's primarily gang violence. All right, so it's gangs, organized criminals. I don't have a problem with the Trump administration or a Democratic administration going after MS-13, going after the mafia, the Italian mafia, the Irish mafia, the Jewish mafia, the Korean mafia. They're organized criminals of every different stripe, biker gangs that are illegal outlaws instead of just good guys who on motorcycles. If you're breaking the law, if you're selling meth, if you're trafficking in sex slaves, if you're shooting people for money, for kicks, whatever, fine, go after them. But those are in the cities. And the other major predominant form of gun violence is suicide. But there are countries like Japan, for instance, which has almost no legal gun possession at all.
Right.
And yet their suicide rate is actually slightly higher than the United States. Somehow, if somebody wants to do something,
Korea too, they top the list sometimes too at suicide rates.
yeah,
Korea and Japan are in competition for who can suicide more.
it's a sad thing. It
Very
is a sad
very
thing. But I'll tell you now, I'll tell you right now, if I'm ever declared a suicide, then you know I was murdered by a political enemy, because it's not something that's in me at all. I don't care what it is. It's just not within me to do it. I understand and forgive and feel sad for anyone who's ever driven to such a terrible thing. But if I wanted to end my own life, or for that matter, anyone else's, a gun is a very convenient tool. But we found out recently that cars and trucks are efficient tools.
Very exactly, and they're actually pushing for quote sensible laws, and now restricting the use of vans and trucks in the UK. I guess they're talking about, of course, the system where they're basically put AI into it and be able to shut down your car at any time. Remember the smart gun thing they want to do with the guns?
Yeah.
Put smart technology in, and they call it smart, but it's really control technology. And the same with the cars, that they'll be able to shut your car down and be able to monitor, track you wherever you go. That's totally Orwellian. That's completely dystopian. That's completely political Satanist.
Not only that, but all these things assume an agency on the part of the government that is something like God. God knows. God, and I believe this. I'm not, again, I don't want to get too religious, but I believe that God knows everything. He's omniscient. He knows everything that was, will be, is now, could be. We're not God. And it's one thing to say a crime has occurred and we've investigated and we have evidence, we have camera footage, we have witnesses, we have DNA evidence, we have fiber evidence, we have all these, we've motive, and this person gets a fair trial and they go to prison, whatever their sentence is, hopefully it's just. But it's another thing to say that somebody might do something, and therefore, because they fit a profile. I mean, look, the left has a problem, and so do I, with the idea of stopping people for driving while black. Okay. I know plenty of black people who are really good Americans who have that experience, who have been stopped in their cars, nice, late model, well-repaired cars, doing normal business just because they're black. And it's wrong. And the left has a problem, and so do I, with police officers who don't adhere to their oaths, who don't act in reasonable manners, who murder people. And it's happened. We've seen people shot in the back, shot crawling on the ground, begging. We've seen this, and even police officers going to prison for this.
No, there are some sour apples in there.
In any profession,
but some, definitely some.
However, you can't say that just because a police officer did something, just because a Muslim did something, just because somebody who called themselves Christian or whatever it was did something, that all other people are going to be guilty of that and should never have their rights. If a veteran happens to have some difficulty coming back, in World War I, they called it shell shock, and there was no great explosion of crime from veterans. There was crime because of liberal policies and prohibition. At World War II, I mean, there were millions and millions of men serving. Almost every able-bodied man was over there, and they saw some gruesome things in all theaters of war. And they came back, and there wasn't a drastic increase in crime. The crime rate came later with their kids who were raised with progressive values. And I think that it's a lack of responsibility, and to some extent poverty and some other causes that are at the root of why crime occurs. And I have no problem with going after that, but I don't want to target any one individual and say that they may do something, therefore we must take their rights.
This is interesting. I want to go back to that point with the veterans, because the actual statistics from the VA is that only 8% of people who served and who come back have some have PTSD. And they also show that PTSD can be clinically basically healed through a process of therapy. So they're getting better at the medical side is getting better at healing PTSD. And also only 8%, that's 92% of veterans who come back that are able to cope with it, that are actually stronger because of because they fought for a good cause, whether or not they agree with each war or not that they're deployed on, they agree with the cause of trying to fight for the liberty of the American people, which of course is a Christ-like thing. But they've been completely slandered, completely lied about in the propaganda machine of the left, and I guess some other maybe even neocon companies that promote that. It's a complete lie that veterans have 40% PTSD. According to VA, it's only 8%. 92% are completely fully functioning. They're actually less likely to kill people. They said that 100 veterans have murdered people after they came back from deployment. Well, that's over 14 years. And in 1 year alone, even within a civilian class, these are, of course, gangbangers or, people who are doing crime. There's 250 plus, murders even just in 1 year. This 100-year statistic of the veterans is over 14 years. That puts it less than, 10 a year. So they have an incredibly low, rate of coming back and becoming murderers. Most of them, 92%, are stronger because they served. And, they're completely discriminated against. We were talking with a vet the other day on the show. They're discriminated against. They can't find work because they've been brainwashed to see the vets as these kind of dangerous, psychologically damaged people, when it's just not the case.
Well, I'll tell you, when it comes to PTSD, I had it. I don't have it now. All right. It's not necessarily debilitating. Some people, it can be. When you talked about medical science finding cures, I'm extremely doubtful. My father was a psychologist. I'm familiar with most of what goes on. Drugging people up or giving them electroshocks is not healing. You know what heals? What heals is being trusted and finding work that's meaningful. What heals is the love of family, and even more so, the unconditional, wordless love of having an animal, a pet. Music heals. Time heals. And we all have relatives who served or have friends who served in past conflicts, Vietnam, Korea, World War II. I mean, this just for this country, not to mention the immigrants who come from violent places. And most of these people are extremely peaceful. They hate violence because they've actually experienced it. They don't glorify it at all. And some people, you hear stories that, my grandpa was in Battle of the Bulge and he never talks about it. Well, maybe it's too difficult to talk about. And yet somehow most of these veterans came back and they managed to work jobs. They managed to raise families. They managed to build a great society, a better society than they had even left. And they deserve the respect that any individual deserves. I don't put veterans on a pedestal, even heroes, even ones who served in wartime in combat, even ones who earned Bronze Stars and Silver Stars. I don't put anybody on a pedestal. I look at their actions and I'll praise them or criticize them for whatever they've done, but they're individuals who fought for their oath to our Constitution. There are many ways to serve, so I don't think that making veterans out to be better is a good thing, but they're no worse. They're certainly no worse than a volunteer firefighter or a police officer or a nurse or a doctor or an engineer or a housewife, anyone doing their best to make things better and not commit harm deserves every protection the government can give us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What gets me is how these vets are sort of demonized. The Vietnam vets were, spit upon when they came back, less so with the Iraq and Afghanistan. But of course, these are people that are putting their lives on the line, and they're getting demonized many times by their own government. They're being targeted by their own government because the totalitarians in the government know that if they feel, if the veterans and the community that actually knows how to fight and use arms and knows how to organize armies and things like that, and that's the reason, why the founding fathers, had everybody 18 to 45 enlisted in the militia, because they knew they fought against tyranny. That is why a huge reason of the Second Amendment to be there in the event that a government becomes totalitarian and evil. that has to be thrown off by the people, and they have to raise up in arms against it. And every totalitarian knows that the people who fought for them and even engaged in warfare are the most dangerous threat to their continued existence.
Well, they're the most dangerous threat for two reasons. Number
Right.
one, because they fought for the ideal, and number two, because hey, they got some training. Which, by the way, if you're a civilian out there, even if you're over 45 or you're not fit for the military physically, whatever it is, there's no reason why you can't learn basic things that will stand you in good stead if something goes wrong. And we hope nothing ever goes wrong, but
yes,
doesn't even have to be a breakdown in society. It could be just a home invasion, which does happen. Unfortunately, it could be any number of crazy things. I would refer your readers and viewers to look at something called the Battle of Athens. We're not talking about Athens, Greece.
Larry Pratt, when he was on the show, he
Yeah.
shared it with us.
Yeah, not Athens, Greece. This is Athens, Georgia.
Tennessee.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And what happened was some veterans came back from war to find that a corrupt cadre, a small group of families, had basically taken over their town, and they were completely corrupt. They were taking money, they were committing crimes, and there was an election, and the election wasn't going to go the way of the people in power. So they grabbed the ballot boxes and they went to the jail and they locked themselves in, and they were going to count them themselves because, you know, it's not who votes that counts, it's who counts the votes. I think Stalin.
Right.
So the veterans wouldn't have any of that. They armed themselves and they stormed the courthouse and they took the ballots and they publicly counted them with witnesses. And the bad guys were out, and pretty soon, as soon as there was a new prosecutor in town, bad guys went to jail where they belonged.
What's interesting, you mentioned that you also suffered from PTSD. The point is, I think this was the point that Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman was in his lecture. He was saying, look, you can get PTSD many different ways. It's not only people who go to war that get PTSD. I mean, people who are, you know, raped, women who are raped get PTSD. People who have a traumatic childhood experience are molested when they're young, or whatever it is. You know, you can have PTSD from just any traumatic experience. Does that mean we take away all those people's rights who have traumatic experiences that were, you know, forced upon them? They didn't choose to go through. It's just such a crazy scenario. And the fact that veterans, you know, in particular, are targeted as for the two reasons that you mentioned. Number one, they're fighting. They sign up, enlist, fight for an ideal, and they fight because that's important. Any war has to have some type of moral high ground, has to fight for some kind of purpose. It can't just be for rape, pillage, and plunder. I mean, that doesn't go too far. But it has to have some moral framework in which just people would feel that this is a just war. So that's it's a spiritual thing, really, that you mentioned in terms of that intent of the ideal war in which you're fighting. And of course, they have training, you know, and people who fight for that ideal, whether they're seeing combat or not, or whether or not they just believe in the ideal. I mean, this is a threat. This is a threat to an establishment that wants to strip us of our ideals, hand us a new narrative, hand us a new ideals, which is basically worship of state. And it leads always to North Korea. It always leads to, you know, any form of real, political Satanism, what we call it, because it actually leads to a hell on earth.
Exactly right. I don't profess to know what's coming after. I believe personally that God will judge me based on everything about my life, even things that are secret, even things that nobody knows, maybe that I don't even know. But that's my belief. I can't prove it, and I wouldn't even try to prove it to someone. They can believe what they want. That's their right. I do know that we should be judged here on earth for our actions. If we commit harm to others, it should be a crime, and we should get a fair hearing and a fair trial. Accusations aren't enough. And if we're found guilty and exhaust appeals, then we have to suffer the consequences, the punishment for that crime, which is primarily to keep us away from other people. But just as every single person out there, every religion, every government, every organization, we've seen it from top to bottom, they can be corrupted. Anyone Good people can be corrupted. It's a sad thing. But at the same token, you can't use the excuse of someone's past to predict their future, because I know of people who have had childhood abuse. I know of people who I myself, well, we're not going to get into it in this program, but that was where mine stemmed from. And I got over it. It took me many years. And it is something that people can get over, and some people can't, but that doesn't mean they can't function and have a valid life. And we don't want to victimize them twice. I've seen people who grew up in abject poverty, grew up in war zones, grew up in Uganda during Amin, grew up in Cambodia during Pol Pot, people who have had the most horrific tragedies, far worse than anything I ever experienced, watching their entire families die. In my family, I met a woman who was my cousin who watched her family die in the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. Far worse than anything I ever personally experienced. However, all those people, very few of them turn out to be victimizers. Very few of them turn out to be crazy. Many of them have problems, but most of them turn out to be decent, caring individuals who are actually more motivated to do good in the world because of what they've experienced, because they know what it's like. You go to a rape crisis center and you will find people who have been victims. You go to a suicide prevention line, you will find people who have been victims, people who have understood the hurt because it's happened to them. And why would we want to penalize those people and take away their right to protect not only themselves, but their families, their friends, their coworkers, their neighbors, people around them? When I go to the mall and I see a man or a woman, and I figure out they're carrying a weapon. I'm pretty good at judging these things. I worked for a police department years ago, and I can see most of the time if they're carrying a weapon. I just look at their general behavior, and if they're not acting erratic and they're, they don't have like dilated pupils and they're not jittery all over the place, they're just acting normally, I'm actually glad they're there. Because there's going to be a time where maybe my wife and daughter are out at the mall, and maybe I'm not shopping with them at that time. I'm glad there's someone there who can step up and protect other people. And that's our responsibility.
Yes. Absolutely. It's so interesting. You mentioned, I want to get back into so many different topics, but let's take a quick break. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this with more with Mr. Dan Gray. Stay with us.
There was a lot of things I really liked about Diella from the very beginning. I loved her passion, the way she sang to the church, the loyalty she had to her parents, and I really wanted somebody who's loyal to True Father, and I knew if she's loyal to her parents, that's a good sign. And the one memory I really have, it really helped me really decide I really want to get blessed to her, was she said that I'd always be second, and she'd always put God before me. And I knew if she was willing to put God before me, I could fully trust her. And that was something that really moved me to, I knew at that point, I wanted to get blessed to her.
Okay, so at first when we met, we completely put each other in boxes, the famous box. And I don't know, I was praying and praying and praying, and I was just not sure in the beginning. We both weren't, and but we just continued talking, and but for some reason it just didn't seem to work, because we were just too focused on ourselves, I think. So, but I kept praying and praying, and then one day I was very frustrated. And I even talked with my mom, and she told me, you know what, Diala, I can see he really loves God. And if he loves God, he can fully love you. And I think that's what I needed to hear. And from that moment on, everything changed.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And we are back. Welcome back, folks. Thursday, December 21st, 2017, our final segment here on the King's Report. We're here, of course, with Mr. Dan Gray, brilliant writer and, of course, activist, NRA lifetime member. Aren't you a lifetime member as well? And, of course, activist, NRA.
Because
Oh,
it
yeah, I
actually
know.
gives them more money and it's more affordable for me. So and I
Wow.
get the same rights,
You
except
do.
I can't wear the jacket with the little pin. And
Oh, yeah,
35.
talking about the Maccabean revolt, Hanukkah. You're Jewish. Happy Hanukkah to you. But can you explain to us Hanukkah and also the Maccabean revolt, why that was so important in Jewish and I would say world history? And of course, after that, let's talk briefly about even the Judeo-Christian principles that lead us to our common day notions of jurisprudence, innocent to prove guilty, fundamental principle in common law and jurisprudence. Tell us a little bit about the Maccabean revolt.
Well, first I want to say Merry Christmas because it's fine with me.
Thank
And I
you.
understand that
Thank you. You're not a racist white supremacist now if you say Merry Christmas.
well, doesn't that make me a racist white supremacist? I thought I'm confused now. It's okay to be triggered out there if you happen to be. Um, no, and I know that you and your viewers are more likely to be worshiping on this Christmas for what it's supposed to really be about, which is celebrating the birth of Christ. And I don't have a problem with you celebrating the birth of Christ. You're not worshiping Santa and gifts and trees, you know. Um, that's what the holiday was supposed to be about. What Hanukkah is about religiously is about a miracle of an oil lamp that was supposed to never go out. It was in the temple. And when the Maccabees took over the temple, when they regained it, they didn't have enough oil, just enough for a day, and it was at least a week's journey to the closest place where they could get the oil that was holy and had been anointed properly or whatever, blessed. and the oil managed to last all those days. So that's the religious miracle. But what I tell people, the miracle to me, the thing that matters more than anything that's just a matter of belief, is the history. The Maccabees, and Maccabee means hammers. Okay, they were brothers, and they were hammers. And my grandfather's name was Hammerman, so I don't know if I'm related to those guys,
Interesting.
but they had a religion. They believed in the one God, and they wanted to worship the way they had worshipped since ancient times. And Alexander the Great took over the entire world, and his generals assumed parts of the succession. And they owned major chunks of land, became kings, and started dynasties. The Hasmonean dynasty owned Israel or Palestine, call it what you want, but it's Israel. And everything was good until they decided that it wasn't okay to worship the one God. And more than that, you had to go and worship their gods, their Greek gods.
Did they put the statue of Zeus in the temple? They forced
Yeah.
the statue of Zeus, the pagan sex philanderer, into the temple.
And that was totally unacceptable to the Maccabees and to the people. So they rose up in arms, a small guerrilla band, against the most powerful military force in the world at that time. You would expect them to be wiped out immediately. But in a few years, with a great deal of suffering, they won. They beat their pants off them, and they restored the religion and the freedom that they believed in, that had been taken from them. You know, this
They
is
fought
not
with
an
the moral
uncommon
high
thing.
ground. They fought with a true justice.
Well, this is a true miracle to me, just as 1776 was a miracle. And again, a small group of people who had their rights taken away from them, who wanted them back, who were willing to take up arms against the most powerful force on the face of the earth, the English Empire at that time. And they won. And it took a lot of time and it took some suffering, but they won. And here we are squandering what they won. But each generation is responsible for maintaining our own liberties and the liberties of the children and the grandchildren that are to come. And I'm still cautiously optimistic that despite all the forces arrayed against us, we can prevail. We must. We have no choice.
Well, let me ask you real quick, because you brought up Israel, about President's sort of redesignation or reaffirmation of the designation of what has always been historically the case, and which everybody knows, that Israel is the capital. I'm sorry, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and he's moved the U.S. embassy there, etc. And of course, the uprising in the Palestinian debate, or other Middle Eastern countries now threatening the destruction of Israel, etc. What's your take on that whole episode?
Well, it was the capital of Israel since King David took the city about 3,000 years ago. And it stopped being the capital of Israel when the country was destroyed for rebellion, one of the only countries that rebelled against and wouldn't stop rebelling against the Romans. And for 2,000 years, it was a capital of first the Roman, I think they were in Tiberias, and we had the Crusaders and the Ottomans and the English and
don't forget the Muslims.
Yeah, well, the Ottoman Turks and there were Arabs who owned it. It's passed back and forth, but it was historically the capital of the nation of Israel. And in 48, it wasn't. But after 67 war, when Israel was attacked, they took it and held it. And they have done something that none of the other groups were willing to do. Not the Romans, not the Arabs, Muslims, not the Ottoman Muslims, not the Turks, not nobody was willing to do what the Jews have done in Israel, what the Israelis have done, which is they permit full rights of worship to Christians, to Jews, to Muslims,
and Muslims,
to Baha'i, to I mean, if the Mohammedans, say the Buddhists, I don't think they have a claim in Jerusalem. But if for some reason they decided that we want to have a little church or whatever they have in Jerusalem, their rights would be protected. You know, if you're a
Mhm.
Muslim in Jerusalem and you want to go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, you know who's protecting you from violence and car bombs from some other schism of Islam, because they kill each other just like they kill us. It's a
Oh
violent,
yes.
violent culture. It's the Israeli army and police, and they guarantee
Mhm.
the right, and they're the ones protecting the Holy Sepulchre. They're not Christians, but they're willing to allow Christians free access, free worship. They don't tell them what to do, when to do, how to do it. They just make sure that they're safe in doing it, which I have a great deal of respect for. Trump did not come up with this policy. Since 1995, it's been a law, and the president has been permitted to give a waiver every 6 months. And Trump simply didn't do what all the presidents since 1995 have done. He had some guts and actually didn't give a waiver. He said, no, we're going to recognize the fact Jerusalem is the capital. And as
Mm.
for all these different European and Muslim countries who, you know, are just super liberal or super socialist or super theocratic or whatever they are, you know, it's funny. They were violent before this, and if this hadn't happened, they wouldn't have stopped being violent. It's just an excuse to beat up a country that actually allows Muslims, Jews, Christians, Druze, whoever they are, to serve in their military, to be citizens, to own property, to observe their own religious rights. There are even members in the Knesset, that's the Israeli parliament, who are not Jews, and they're Muslims, they're Arabs, they're whatever they are. And they got elected and they have a chance to express their views and to vote. And, you know, I really don't have a problem with that. I mean, I don't really like the government of Israel all that much, but then I don't really like governments all that much. They're a
Mhm.
necessary evil.
Exactly. Well, very interesting. Very interesting. What's your final take? Just, I know we're running over time right now, but quick, what's your take on President Trump? How he's ending his first year? There was a story about his tweets that in year in review. What's your take on his first year? Has he performed well? How would you grade the president?
A solid B. I want more, but he has managed to absolutely expose the bias of the press in ways that no one can possibly deny. The press, the mainstream media. He's exposed the deep state for being in control, no matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican in charge.
Mm.
And this tax bill, which I was prepared to, that's what I thought we were going to talk about, was a brilliant move because just like the Democrats who passed Obamacare and Affordable Care Act and said, well, good luck to you trying to unpass this. You'll never be able to do that. Well, good luck trying to unpass tax cuts. And now the Democrats are complaining that the tax cuts aren't permanent, that they expire in 2027 in 8 years. Well, you know, it's funny, but the Congressional Budget Office scores these bills and says it's going to cost us $1 trillion in 8 years, which is bad. I agree. On the other hand, it doesn't count the extra money that always comes in when you lower taxes because more people make more money and they do more things and more taxes are paid. And Obama, his administration in 8 years racked up $8 trillion in debt. So,
right.
Is it good that we're going to be a trillion more in debt? Possibly. No. Is it better than being another $8 trillion in debt? I'd say so.
And there's your final word with Dan Gray. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us. Brilliant words. And of course, let everybody know once again how people can support the work you're doing and or contact you.
Well, as far as support, you know, I'm semi-retired and I'm looking for work. So if you got money and you want somebody like me, then contact me. You can find me on Facebook. I have my picture there. I am with a black shirt holding a sword, and it's a real sword, and I do know how to use it. Just a fencing foil. It's one of my little things that I like to use. And I'm on Twitter. I'm on Gab. Both of those are Dan_Gray_. I'm using Gab more and more. Twitter is just really bothering me, and Facebook is just a waste of time most of the time. I mean, there's some great people on there.
And they admitted, the creators of Facebook admitted, they admit it's meant to get you hooked to the dopamine feedback loop.
It is. I actually made up a meme. If you find me on Facebook, if you just put in Dan Gray and you go on, I'm usually near the top of whoever you're looking for. You see my picture. I look like me. I don't use fake things. I just made up a meme. It was an experiment. So I'm very curious. It's got good response so far. Using a picture by Robert Blake, the great religious artist of the England 1700s. And it's sort of a little rap poem about why Facebook makes me antisocial. So I'd love some feedback on that.
Be sure to check that out, folks. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us this morning, and also all of you joining us from out there in internet, YouTube land. We thank you so much. Have a great day. Have a blessed day. We'll see you tomorrow, 5 a.m. sharp on the King's Report. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.